sometimes I look around and I just wonder, what's going to happen to all these people? All these lost souls who believe what they see on the news, believe voting can change a system, believe we're going to Mars. We are on the verge of the biggest transformation in human history, and all these people care about is, are you voting for Trump or Hillary? Who won the game on Sunday? Or did you buy an iPhone 7? It's truly unbelievable. Could you imagine if the power grid went out? People cannot live without their phones for 5 minutes. What if the power went out for 5 months? These people are lied to every single day of their lives. They are living the biggest lie they can possibly imagine. They are not going to know what hit them when this world crumbles. And it will. They will wake up all right, but it'll be too late. I'm sure many of you feel the same, but sometimes I wish I never thought for myself. Sometimes I wish I never looked into things, questioned the system, questioned reality, because it's just so overwhelming sometimes. This world is so sick. Everything is backwards, rigged, corrupt, fake, beyond comprehension. We live in such a synthetic reality. Everything about this world is fake. Fake food, fake political system, fake religious system, fake medical system, fake money, fake skies. It's unreal. You know what I think? I think in this absolute fake rigged reality in which we live, do you want to know what the only real thing is? The only thing that matters that's real? It's your spirit, your soul, the spiritual, because they can't take that from you. That you can save, because you can't change the system. This sick, fake world was meant to fall, and there's no other way around it. You think we're dealing with mere humans? These psychopaths in control are vessels. They're all influenced by forces beyond this realm, beyond your perception, beyond this physical dimension that you perceive. This is why the world is the way it is. This is how they are able to carry out their sick agenda against us all and do the things they are capable of doing. Because understand, this goes beyond the flesh. This is why there is a new world order. After many years on this journey of finding some type of truth in this world, this is what I finally realized. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. This is what we are dealing with. This is why the world is the way it is. The way I see it, the sooner you understand this simple truth, the better off you'll be. God bless.
Hey guys, it's KJ from the Scariest Movie Ever channel on YouTube. Do you ever get that feeling that something's just not right with the world? Do you ever wonder if maybe we're actually living in some kind of a computer hologram? A computer program? Do you ever get the feeling that we are actually living in a movie? Not just any movie, I'm talking the scariest sci-fi horror film you can imagine. But it's real. So I've noticed a lot of really interesting patterns and synchronicities where our reality is mirroring entertainment, films, TV shows. So I'm going to show you multiple examples of that in this video. And some of what we're going to be delving into has to do with social engineering and predictive programming. This is the poster for a new movie called Us and Them. And this is a classic example of a time where a film is actually mirroring things happening in our reality. I also feel that it's a classic example of social engineering and even predictive programming. The movie's about a guy from the wrong side of the tracks who decides to fight back against the, quote, 1%. I've covered the subject of a Civil War 2.0 here on the channel, and many other people have seen this coming as well. And this movie, Us and Them, fits perfectly into that narrative. But how is it predictive programming and social engineering, and what's the difference? So there's countless examples of social engineering. I can give you one right here. This is Jaden Smith. This is the actor Will Smith's son. And here's a kid that has been used for a few years now to push the idea of gender fluidity. That your gender isn't the gender that you were born with, it's whatever you identify with. And we see these themes played out time and time again in all forms of entertainment. It's all about confusion. So in this context, social engineering refers to psychological manipulation of people into performing specific actions. And here's another example of social engineering. There's so many commercials out there that have men being effeminate, men wearing dresses. And once again, this is all a part of that agenda, the social engineering agenda in reference to gender fluidity. As for predictive programming, one of the most classic examples of that came to us before the 9/11 attacks. Many people are looking back now in different movies and TV shows, and they're seeing tons and tons and tons of signs and a lot of symbolism that referenced the 9/11 attacks, sometimes years before they actually occurred. So here's just another example of predictive programming. This comes to us from the movie Knowing. It starred Nicolas Cage, and there's a scene in the film where he's watching the news, and on the news there happens to be an oil rig in the Gulf of Mexico that catches fire. There's explosions and all kinds of chaos. And of course, this film came out before the actual oil rig blew up in the Gulf of Mexico, causing the BP oil spill. So even more interesting, and staying connected with the BP oil spill, there is an Illuminati card for the oil spill. Now, this is from the Illuminati card game that came out, I believe, in 1993, maybe 95. And if you're not familiar with the card game, you should check it out, because many of the cards in this game have actually come to pass. They actually predicted future events. So then there's the question, are they actually putting this stuff in place in these different forms of media because they know it's coming, or is all of this stuff coming through spiritually? And I personally think it's a mix of both. And before we continue with the video, this is just kind of a side note. I've been watching a TV series called Designated Survivor. It's very interesting in this one as well. I'm wondering if this is predictive programming. The whole idea is about a guy that was neither right nor left. He kind of fell somewhere in the middle. He wasn't really a big political guy, but he winds up becoming the president of the United States. And just last night they had their newest episode, and this is a spoiler alert unless you're watching the show or not, but somebody actually tried to assassinate the president here. They actually shot him, and so far it looks like he's survived now. So I do find it interesting that the basic premise of the show is mirroring our reality. Because the narrative is that Trump was an outsider to politics, wasn't necessarily right or necessarily left. In many ways, he's being portrayed as a man of the people, or a populist leader, just like the president from Designated Survivor. And of course we see that narrative playing out constantly in our media nowadays as well, ever since Trump was elected, and even before he was elected. It seems like there's stories every other day about people talking about assassinating him. So yes, a lot of this so-called entertainment does not have your best interest at heart. Typically it's trying to program you. This is why they call it programs. You're going to watch your program on TV. We are being programmed by a lot of this media. Dividing of the races. Also, now we have a lot of the movies and TV shows coming out that are pushing the social justice warrior narrative. They are compartmentalizing us. They want to separate us all into small little groups and then have us all turn on each other. So we've seen plenty of programming with this idea of the rich versus the poor, us versus them. So much of our entertainment media over the last few years has been fueling this idea of anarchy, fueling this idea of nihilism, fueling this idea of rising up, that it should be no surprise now that all around the world, what do we have? Violent riots breaking out. This is what happens to the masses after years and years of predictive programming, social engineering. Once again, we find reality mirroring entertainment, or entertainment mirroring reality. It's almost as if we're living in a movie. And of course, this also reminds me of another example of how reality and entertainment are mirroring each other, and that comes with the Purge films. In the Purge films, one day a year in America, everyone's basically free to do whatever they want. There's no law, there's no police on the streets, so it's just chaos. So of course, throughout the years, as these movies have been coming out, more and more we're finding headlines like this. Everything you need to know about Ireland's real-life purge night. Real-life purge in Brazil. Mass robberies, rapes, and homicides as military police go on strike. Or even the purge in real life. Alarming report in Kentucky, Louisville police respond to purge threats. Many scientists, philosophers, and business leaders believe that there is a 20 to 50% probability that humans are already living in a computer-simulated virtual world. In April 2016, researchers gathered at the American Museum of Natural History to debate this notion. The argument approaching photorealist simulations that millions of people can simultaneously participate in. It is conceivable that with advancements in artificial intelligence, virtual reality, and computing power, members of future civilizations could have decided to run a simulation of their ancestors. Bank of America sent a note to its clients saying that there's a 20 to 50% chance that we're living in the Matrix, meaning that the world we experience as real is actually just a simulation. So I think it's very interesting that the Bank of America came out with that statement, especially considering the fact that you can find these heavily occultic murals. So if you haven't looked into this subject, please do. Many people have picked these occult symbols apart. It's just interesting you'd find these in a bank, and many of these occult symbols seem to be predicting future events, a coming New World Order, a one world system. Even with one of the most popular TV series on TV at the moment, and that's The Walking Dead, we find this mirroring our reality. The scourge of drugs on Britain's streets, shocking footage shows people turned into The Walking Dead after taking spice, and, quote, zombies slumped in town center. The signs are all around us, sometimes even literally. So while The Walking Dead plays, while we have all these new movies and TV shows coming out about zombies, again, mirroring in our real life, we have this. We have headlines like strange cannibalistic attacks increasing around the world. Now here's another example that I've covered in some videos in the past. It's the massive amount of movies and TV shows that are out there that are all about demonic possession. But there is certainly no shortage of these kinds of images and these kinds of ideas in our modern entertainment. So now we're getting headlines like this. U.S. exorcists explain huge increase in demand for the right. And headlines like this. Worldwide demonic possession on the rise. Church prepares for spiritual warfare. The reports of demonic possession around the world have gotten so crazy we actually have scientists now working with exorcists. As a psychiatrist, I diagnose mental illness. Also, I help spot demonic possession. Something else that's become quite clear over the years is there's a lot of movies that come out that are targeted for the teen audience. And all of these movies have to do with the future. And in the future of these films, it's the New World Order. So I have no doubt that part of the programming in these films is programming the youth for a New World Order. The Maze Runner is one example of this. Another one of these New World Order themed films for kids is called The Giver. Divergent is another example of one of these New World Order themed films, targeted towards the teens. And I'm certainly not the only one that sees the connection between our reality and these particular films. This is from an article right here on the chickspy.com. Divergent is an eerily realistic depiction of the real world. Well, of course it is. All of these movies are. It's part of the programming for the kids, preparing them for a one world order system. And of course, at the top of the pyramid of these kinds of films, you'll find The Hunger Games. The Hunger Games is not only filled with these dystopian ideas, this New World Order, it's also filled with a lot of Illuminati symbolism, if you will, or satanic symbolism. And once again, I'm not the only person who sees these synchronicities. This is an article right here from SheKnows.com, 7 moments in the Hunger Games that mirror real life. It also comes out in more subtle ways sometimes. You may remember this image right here from the Hunger Games. The character in the dress is named Effie Trinket. So Lady Gaga is one of those so-called Illuminati artists that's constantly pushing forth deeper mysteries, occult mysteries, and lots of symbolism through her performances and her music videos. Not long ago she sang the national anthem, and it was interesting because so many people made this connection between her and Effie Trinket, they actually made a meme about it. So those of you familiar with the Terminator films will recognize the name Skynet. In the movies, Skynet is the corporation that's behind all the technology with the Terminators. So it turns out that the NSA actually has a Skynet program. Or you may remember the movie Minority Report with Tom Cruise. This movie took place in the future. And in the future is all about pre-crime. They were able to figure out who the criminals were before they committed their crimes. And of course that is no longer just the stuff of movies. Pre-crime is here. Get ready for a real-life Minority Report. The TV series Westworld is another example. In this TV series there are androids that look just like human beings, and a few of the main characters are actually prostitutes. So these are essentially sex robots. And of course, once again, this is mirroring reality. Meet Harmony, the first sex robot to offer an emotional connection with her human lover. And she's on sale very soon. Here's another movie that came out not long ago called Another Earth, where scientists find another Earth that completely and totally mirrors our planet, even with the people on the planet. So everybody on Earth now has a doppelganger on this new Earth. So no surprise, we have this story that came out just less than a year ago. Scientists may have just discovered another Earth. There could be water on a rocky planet found orbiting a sun near ours. The next step is finding out who, if anyone, is home. Once again, you see how it's all mirroring. So these are just some of the examples I wanted to share with you. And it does raise the question, have you ever felt that we're living in a fabricated reality? Have you ever felt that we're actually living in some kind of a movie? Predictive programming, social engineering, even spiritual synchronicities, it's all there. When we look around at our world and when we compare it to a lot of the entertainment that we're fed and we're programmed with over so many years, it's not hard to see the connections there. So I'll leave you with that, and I want to thank you once again for watching the video. Until next time, take care of yourselves out there, and I'll talk to you real soon.
I wanted to do this video as a kind of extension to a recent video put out by Amerishima 2012 regarding the film Event Horizon, and just expound on it a bit more because this is a film I've been over with a fine-tooth comb on my research path. It's something I've covered before and I will cover in my time and space project in the future, but I just wanted to share this right now in light of his video. So what Amarashima is basically talking about in his video is this gateway machine in the film Event Horizon, and how interestingly when it opens the gate, it becomes a water door, which is very common in Hollywood. Much of the time you'll see a gateway or portal depicted as going through water or around it. And he then mentions how in the film Contact, the gateway or wormhole machine is placed on water, which allows the occupant to fall towards the water as the doorway opens. The film Contact with Jodie Foster playing the character of Ellie Arroway. Now, before I get to the water aspect, I want to point something else out here in this film Event Horizon. When the machine activates and opens this gateway, the camera focuses in on the very center of the machine as it opens the gate. And interestingly, when it opens, it reveals an 8-spoke design, then pans out to a wider shot, and the water door follows. Now, the 8-spoke design, or the 8-spoke wheel, is something that's highly connected to the occult and can be found all over the world, I've learned in my research on this topic.
What is that?
It's a wheel.
Now, what I find really interesting is CERN's LHC Atlas detector features this exact same 8-spoke design. And of course, the 8 spokes on the Atlas detector being 8 superconducting magnets, which I find quite fascinating to say the least. But more on the 8-spoke wheel connection in the near future, but for now, let's move on. I want to talk about entering a reality through water. And entering a reality through water, this concept, it's extremely prevalent in Hollywood, as I mentioned, but this concept is highly understood in the occult world and ancient cultures going back. Now, water, just like mirrors, are thought to be a gateway for spirits. Water and mirrors are both believed to be connected to the spirit world. In the paranormal world, it's widely believed spirits or demons can utilize mirrors as a doorway and portal between worlds. So a two-way portal or a two-way gate. You know, some quick movie references are the movie Constantine with Keanu Reeves. As it's explained by Reeves' character Constantine, water acts as a type of lubricant to facilitate the transition into the dimension of hell, and can traverse dimensions into the afterlife if you are submerged or at least partially in contact with water. Again, Keanu Reeves in the Matrix film goes through the water door upon entering the real world, then awakens in the synthetic womb constructed by the machines. And of course, awakening in water once again. And of course, the Stargate franchise, which we all are familiar with, depicting the water door. And there are countless more examples. It indeed seems as though water is a powerful conductor of spiritual energy. I believe this is why various river streams were considered sacred and played pivotal roles in the spirit world for various ancient cultures. It was considered to be the element that transports the soul to the spirit world. There's river Styx for the Romans and the Greeks, Euphrates River for the Babylonians, the Nile River for the Egyptians, and of course there's the Well of Souls beneath the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem, also known as the Cave of Spirits, Well of Spirits, and the Pit of Souls. And this is what I believe the 9/11 memorial in New York is all about. The unbelievably ominous design, which features a cube within a cube, a tesseract in Saturnian death black as you can get, with a literal opening of a pit dead center, where water cascades down the four walls and disappears into a seemingly bottomless cubic void. So we have two reflecting pools, 30 feet deep, with a 3-foot lip above ground, for a total depth of, you guessed it, 33 feet. So we have 33 feet of illuminated water flowing into the void. You simply cannot get more evil than this. Yet the masses just brush it off. I mean, just ask yourself, does it really look like an effort to ease pain and suffering, an effort to comfort people, or a nod to hopelessness, death, and despair? This all really is no surprise once you study and learn the occult and spiritual aspect of 9/11. And of course, it's no surprise that's why many believe this memorial is referring to what is described in Revelation regarding what is called the bottomless pit, the abyss, which is described as a surging water deep or a well.
Hawking is calling for the world government to stop the robot apocalypse. Professor Stephen Hawking has pleaded with world leaders to keep technology under control before it destroys humanity. In an interview with The Times, the physicist said humans need to find ways to identify threats posed by artificial intelligence before problems escalate. Since civilization began, aggression has been useful inasmuch as it has definite survival advantages, the scientist said. It is hardwired into our genes by Darwinian evolution, which we know is a lie created by spiritualists. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go to christiantruther.com and search devolution. We've exposed it heavily. Now, however, technology has advanced at such a pace that this aggression may destroy us all by nuclear or biological war. We need to control this inherited instinct by our logic and reason. Hawking added that the best solution would be some form of world government that could supervise the developing power of AI. World government, huh? Really? Because if the world government were to have the power, a centralized power with AI, what in the world could take place? Totalitarian control. And it would be catastrophic. But this supposed genius, Stephen Hawking, is suggesting we need a world government to control it. NASA's daring $8 billion plan to finally find extraterrestrial life. You got it. A congressman, a billionaire movie director, and an unparalleled mission of discovery. I want to point out one word. 2 words, sorry. Deep in the solar system, a darkness has spread over the grim, airless field of ice that threatens to swallow us. Night has come to the nightmare glacier. But then we see the shiny spacecraft with its 4 gangy legs, extending outward to find purchase on the jagged ice. Within scientific instruments begin to blink on, one by one. Soon they will start sniffing for any hint of life on this most alien and mysterious of worlds in the solar system, the Jovian moon of Europa. Through the HoloLens each of us wears, we watch the simulation of what might happen about 15 years from now on the icy, forbidding moon. The otherworldly illusion is shattered when a voice booms out. It's John Culberson, a conservative Republican politician from Texas. He wants to know what happens if one of the blinking instruments fail. Not to worry, he is told all of the spacecraft systems are redundant. Good, Culberson replies. The immensity of what you're doing is too important in human history. You don't want to miss this chance. Europa truly does represent a singular chance. Crossing 800 million kilometers with a sizable, robust payload will require vast sums of money. There won't be a second chance, but Europa represents a gamble in another sense too. No one knows whether NASA will discover a frozen, dead world far from the sun, or if the organization will make the most profound of discoveries, just like below the ice. During the last decade, NASA has recast its human and robotic space exploration programs around the search for life, both in our solar system and beyond. Much of this effort has focused on Mars, which is relatively close to Earth and may have harbored life in the past. Culberson has pushed the agency further to seek extant life. He and a lot of scientists believe the best place to find extraterrestrial life in the solar system lies in deep oceans below Europa's inhospitable surface. During the last 5 years, Culberson has bullheadedly shoved about $500 million through Congress to give NASA's elite planetary probe scientists and engineers a chance to land on Europa. Now in late February, he has come to the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in the hills just north of Los Angeles to visit the wizards here who conceived the Voyager spacecraft, developed Cassini and Galileo, and landed Curiosity on Mars. What progress, he wondered, had they made toward testing out the secrets of Europa? Now, I just wanted to point this out here. NASA is going to spend roughly $8 billion, potentially, to finally find extraterrestrial life. Now, of course, we know what this is. They're searching for the Nephilim. Listen, just because I'm reporting on this doesn't mean I believe in ET, okay? I'm showing you what NASA's doing next, okay? Harvard scientists theorize that fast radio bursts come from alien space travel. Could these mysterious flashes of radio waves come from a planet-sized device to power an alien spacecraft? Fast radio bursts, or FRB, are perhaps the most mysterious phenomena we observe in the cosmos. Earlier this year, astronomers announced that they had pinpointed an FRB for the first time in a dwarf galaxy that sits 3 billion light years away. These intense blasts of radio waves last only 1 to 5 milliseconds, and they have perplexed astronomers since the first one was discovered in 2007. The leading theories are the FRBs come from an incredibly volatile cosmic events, such as material being ejected from supermassive black holes, the explosion of a superluminous supernova, or rotating magnetars, the lash surrounding material with their immense magnetic fields. But researchers at the Harvard-Smithsonian, keyword, Center for Astrophysics have proposed a much more enticing theory. What if FRBs aren't natural phenomena at all, but rather emit from a massive artificial structure used to power alien spacecraft? They're leading us all to the massive, massive deception that the Bible speaks of. So many people are going to be led astray by what they uncover or find in deep space. Don't be fooled.
You know them as the Communist News Network, the Clinton News Network, and the Criminal News Network. Well, CNN has sunk to an all-time low. They can now be rightly called the Cannibal News Network. Reza Aslan, hailed as a renowned Iranian-American author, professor, and scholar of religions, has a new show on CNN called Believer, a 6-episode spiritual adventure series in which he explores the world's most fascinating faith-based groups. In a recently aired episode, Aslan sat with the Aghoris of India. The small sect worships Shiva, the Hindu god of destruction, and according to CNN, have been known to eat feces, drink out of human skulls, eat human flesh, and smear themselves with the ashes of corpses. So here's Aslan sitting around with these supposed cannibals as he lets them rub what they say are the ashes of cremated humans on his face. Then the Aghoris version of Charles Manson places a necklace of what looks like human teeth and gums around Aslan's head. Later, this Aghori dude threatens to cut Aslan's head off. That is, if you can believe what the CNN subtitles are telling you. The bottom line is that some sick Hollywood producer somewhere thought it would be a good idea to show a CNN reporter eating the brains of a human being. Now this could all be a publicity stunt, and it could be that Reza didn't eat anything. From what I can tell in the video, you can't even see anything going into his mouth. but by his own testimony, he did eat a piece of a human brain. He wrote in his Facebook post, "Want to know what a dead guy's brain tastes like? Charcoal. It was burnt to a crisp. Hashtag believer." Now guys, you've heard people joking about brain dead liberal zombies. Well, now we've got brain dead, and in true zombie fashion, brain eating liberal zombies. And the zombie is this paid representative for CNN who's eating human beings as they desperately seek to improve their failing ratings. Now on Reza's Facebook page, while some checked out liberal lame brains, no pun intended, applaud Reza for his immoral culinary snack, I spotted a couple noteworthy non-liberal comments. This lady says, "Sorry, but they made a cannibal out of you." Luigi here says, "You are truly a walking sociopathic entity. Mom and Dad must be very proud of you. Congratulations." Ian says, "You are a sick degenerate." Now, if you want to leave Reza a comment, I'll leave his Facebook link in the description below. Maybe you'll want to give him a piece of your mind. But then again, that might not be a good idea.
Artificial human life could soon be grown in a lab after embryo breakthrough. March 2nd. Artificial human life could soon be grown from scratch in the lab after scientists successfully created a mammal embryo using only stem cells. Cambridge University mixed two kinds of mouse stem cells and placed them on a 3D scaffold. After 4 days of growth in a tank of chemicals designed to mimic conditions inside the womb, the cells formed the structure of a living mouse embryo. The breakthrough has been described as a masterpiece in bioengineering, which could eventually allow scientists to grow artificial human embryos in the lab without the need for a sperm or an egg. Do we realize the detrimental impact this could have? Number one, baby farming. Designer babies. Number two, they're going to bring back the Nephilim. Science is actively working to bring back the Nephilim, whether this organization or the individuals at Cambridge University know it or not. The special interests will use this technology, biotechnology, to create or to recreate the Nephilim. Growing embryos would help researchers to study the very early stages of human life so they could understand why so many pregnancies fail, but it is likely to prove controversial and raise ethical questions about what constitutes human life. How many times are we being brought to this brink of what constitutes as human life? It's not hard. We are not animals, but continually evolution or scientists want us to believe that we are just another animal. If you are in an argument with an evolutionist or a person who believes in evolution over creation, ask them one question. If your dog or your pet was drowning and a random stranger, a random human stranger was also drowning, who would you save? It is the hardest question. I actually went on back and forth with a person who believed in evolution on the website recently. We were, 85 comments back and forth. And he said he would go, it would depend on who was closer, depend on who I can get to first. That is shocking. Think about that. So if a person is drowning, about to die, the individual who I was speaking with would go for the pet if the pet was closer and let the human die. We have a substantial problem, and this is one of the main things about evolution and, of course, science. They're trying to equate us to animals, or that we are all the same. Everything is life. There is no greater or worse, greater or lesser, excuse me. This is massively incorrect. God created us in His image. We are special. And if we don't understand where this is going to go, the very second it actually begins to happen on the mainstream in public, it's not going to end well. Just like the very second they actually alter DNA, there is no going back. Just like the very second that man and technology fully integrate, there is no going back. Just like the very second that they create a generalized or general artificial intelligence, there is no going back. Because once those things take place, it will exponentially either grow itself or alter the human germline or the human DNA. And if that hybrid or that lab-grown human, can't call it a human, it was grown in a lab. Removing the hand of God from creation is a terrible idea, but science continually wants to do this. You have to ask the question, who in the world is funding this? And at what point does it make it okay that we are at the brink of understanding what human life is? Let me go down here. What constitutes human life? It's the simplest question. But science makes everything complicated. We also have chimeras being grown. Animal and human hybrids. Once it's fully done, there is really no going back. Once germlines or DNA gets altered, things are radically going to spin out of control. And it's all by design.
WikiLeaks released what it claims to be the largest ever release of confidential documents on the CIA. This dump comes on the heels of a preview that the Free Thought Project reported on last month, in which WikiLeaks released documents showing the CIA's role in interfering with the French elections. This dump, however, is the apparent mother lode which the Transparency Organization allegedly obtained from the CIA's Center for Cyber Intelligence in Langley. It involves a massive cache of data ranging from the years 2013 to 2016. Inside this data, according to WikiLeaks, are the tools the CIA has been using for years to wreak digital havoc on the world. According to the release, recently the CIA lost control of the majority of its hacking arsenal, including malware, viruses, trojans, weaponized zero-day exploits, malware remote control systems, and associated documentation. This extraordinary collection, which amounts to more than several 100 million lines of code, gives its possessor the entire hacking capacity of the CIA. The archive appears to have been circulated among former US government hackers and contractors in an unauthorized manner, one of whom has provided WikiLeaks with portions of the archive. WikiLeaks notes that this is only the first part of a series they're calling Year Zero, which is comprised of 8,761 documents and files from an isolated high-security network situated inside the CIA's Center for Cyber Intelligence in Langley, Virginia. Year Zero, according to WikiLeaks, introduces the scope and direction of the CIA's global covert hacking program, its malware arsenal, and dozens of zero-day weaponized exploits against a wide range of US and European company products, including Apple's iPhone, Google's Android, and Microsoft's Windows, and even Samsung TVs, which are turned into covert microphones. This leak exposes the massive hacking powerhouse the CIA has become in the last decade, surpassing even that of the NSA. Since 2001, the CIA has gained political and budgetary preeminence over the U.S. National Security Agency. The CIA found itself building not just its now famous drone fleet, but a very different type of covert, global spanning force, its own substantial fleet of hackers. The agency's hacking division freed it from having to disclose its often controversial operations to the NSA, its primary bureaucratic rival, in order to draw on the NSA's hacking capacities. What's also notable about this leak is the fact that it reveals another Snowden-type whistleblower within the massive spying apparatus. This time, however, knowing how the US treats whistleblowers, the source has chosen to remain anonymous. In a statement to WikiLeaks, quote, "The source details policy questions that they say urgently need to be debated in public, including whether the CIA's hacking capabilities exceed its mandated powers and the problem of public oversight of the agency. The source wishes to initiate a public debate about the security, creation, use, proliferation, and democratic control of cyber weapons. Cyber weapons pose a massive threat to the entire world's infrastructure, as they can be used by anyone from rival states, cyber mafias, and even teenage hackers. According to Julian Assange, there is an extreme proliferation risk in the development of cyber weapons. Comparisons can be drawn between the uncontrolled proliferation of such weapons which results from the inability to contain them combined with their high market value and the global arms trade. But the significance of Year Zero goes well beyond the choice between cyber war and cyber peace. The disclosure is also exceptional from a political, legal, and forensic perspective. Noting the several implications of releasing these hacking tools publicly, WikiLeaks will avoid distributing the armed version of the cyber weapons, quote, until a consensus emerges on the technical and political nature of the CIA's program and how such weapons should be analyzed, disarmed, and published. To quantify the sheer size and scope of Vault 7, WikiLeaks notes that just Part 1 already eclipses the total number of pages published over the first 3 years of the Edward Snowden NSA leaks. One of the most ominous techniques profiled by WikiLeaks in Vault 7 is Weeping Angel, developed by the CIA's Embedded Devices Branch, EDB, a cyber weapon that infests smart TVs and transforms them into microphones. As WikiLeaks reports, after infestation, Weeping Angel places the target TV in fake off mode so that the owner falsely believes the TV is off when it's really on. In fake off mode, the TV operates as a bug, recording conversations in the room and sending them over the internet to a covert CIA server. It gets far worse. According to WikiLeaks, the CIA's Mobile Devices Branch developed numerous attacks to remotely hack and control popular smartphones. Infected phones can be instructed to send the CIA the user's geolocation, audio, and text communications, as well as covertly activate the phone's camera and microphone. Despite iPhone's minority share of 14.5% of the global smartphone market in 2016, a specialized unit in the CIA's Mobile Development Branch produces malware to infest, control, and exfiltrate data from iPhones and other Apple products running iOS like iPads. CIA's arsenal includes numerous location and remote zero days developed by the CIA or obtained from NSA and the FBI or purchased from cyber arms contractors like Bait Shop. The disappropriate focus on iOS may be explained by the popularity of the iPhone among social, political, diplomatic, and business elites. A similar unit targets Google's Android, which is used to run the majority of the world's smartphones. That's 85% of the market, including Samsung, HTC, and Sony. Check this out. 1.15 billion Android-powered phones were sold last year. Year Zero shows that as of 2016, the CIA had 24 weaponized Android zero days, which it has developed itself and obtained from GCHQ, NSA, and cyber arms contractors. These techniques permit the CIA to bypass the encryption of WhatsApp, Signal, Telegram, Weibo, Confide, and Cloakman by hacking the smartphones that they run on and collecting audio and message traffic before encryption is applied. WikiLeaks put the world on notice with the news of the encrypted torrent file Vault 7, and they tweeted out the key to unlock it. The passphrase they chose? Splinter it into 1,000 pieces and scatter it into the winds. The patriots at WikiLeaks have gone out of their way to warn every one of us. The question is, are we going to listen?
The flag of an Iraqi Christian minority party now flies over this ancient Christian town in northern Iraq. It's a victory for fighters who pushed Islamic State militants out of Bakufa just weeks ago. Now with 70 active members, the newly formed Christian militia patrols the town.
I only have a little bit of experience, but we have faith, and in my opinion, faith is greater than military experience.
Bakufa was recaptured by Kurdish Peshmerga fighters. Then they helped set up the militia.
We, the Peshmerga, came here from Erbil to protect our Christian brothers and their homes. There was constant cooperation and assistance from both sides.
The predominantly Christian village was one of many in the area overrun by Islamic militants this summer, forcing residents to flee. The Christian force has a lot of local support, but with few weapons at its disposal, volunteers are having to wait their turn to serve. The Christian fighters hoping to keep Bakufa secure long enough for families to return. Padmananda Rama, The Associated Press.
Now, Joint Viking is a military drill that's going to bring training to the Arctic Circle. Why in the world are they training at the Arctic Circle? Norway, B Troop 1st Squadron, 91st Cavalry Regiment, 173rd Airborne Brigade forward deployed to Norway to participate in Exercise Joint Viking, an exercise which brings together reconnaissance, infantry, armor, and artillery assets for a NATO joint and combined arms exercise, stimulating high-intensity warfare in challenging Arctic conditions. For the past several weeks, paratroopers of B Troop 1-91 Cav have conducted partnered classroom and cold weather environment training alongside soldiers of Norway's Northern Brigade, receiving instruction on a variety of skills critically important to conducting operations north of the Arctic Circle. The importance of Joint Viking is twofold, said Captain Thomas Hunes, commander of B Troop 191 Cav. Expanding our capability to fight in Arctic or cold weather environments is extremely valuable. At the same time, as a U.S. Army Europe-based unit, we have great opportunity to train and interface with NATO allies. Exercise Joint Viking takes place over an exceptionally large geographic area, with a maneuver area covering more than 200 square kilometers of forested and mountainous terrain. Looking to the future, we don't want to wait until we are having to operate together in a combat environment to learn how to integrate and be effective. Joint Viking is a unique opportunity to conduct maneuver operations over an extremely large maneuver space in a multinational setting, said Hunes. Paratroopers of 191 Cav have received specialized instruction in the employment of BV-206, all-terrain tracked personnel carriers, cold weather tents, emergency stoves, and cold weather injury prevention, in preparation for live fire training and maneuver exercises as part of Joint Viking. Further, B Troop has taken advantage of opportunities to train in winter search and rescue. Paratroopers of 191 Cav participated in practical exercises covering methods of conducting area searches for victims of avalanche events, learned to identify areas with high risk of avalanche, gained additional experience utilizing emergency personnel locator beacons in search operations, and refined methods for conducting area searches in the aftermath of an avalanche. Why in the world is the U.S. Army training above the Arctic Circle? What's going on there? And why in the world do we have world leaders visiting basically the South Pole or the Antarctic? Of course, the Arctic Circle is up north. Why are they training there? What is the interest? Geopolitically, of course, there's a lot of oil and resources to be gained. But there's more to it than that, and we, of course, know that. There's something to all these drills that are going on up north. There's something to all the military drills that are, of course, that we just covered the other day at Guantanamo Bay. Just as predicted by Clairvoyant, Antarctica will break apart. Hidden past will be exposed. Is this what's going on? Something enormous, epoch-making, is happening in Antarctica. Although the recent visits by heads of state and other high-profile figures to Antarctica remain shrouded in mystery, but there are repeated suggestions that things are changing rapidly there. Perhaps the pole shift is happening at a drastic rate, and something buried or hidden may have been discovered. It is well known in conspiracy circles that the Nazis established a secret base in Antarctica during World War II, and it apparently involved the UFO-type aircraft being secretly developed, though no one with any position authority has ever dared to confirm these developments in a major public way. The U.S. launched a massive military operation after the war in Antarctica, led by Admiral Richard E. Byrd. And of course, we've gone over this several times. And they were met with superior military force that ultimately repelled the American expedition. Massive secrets were suggested by the operational secrecy and the buried accounts and the unfinished business at the South Pole. The Russians, too, were involved in territorial disputes and expeditions before the international treaties brought quiet to the South Pole front. With the recent melt and cracking of the ice, which is expected to lead the release of an iceberg the size of Delaware, there is reason to speculate about what we might find in the least explored and least understood landmass on the globe. And of course, just outside of Antarctica sits something very strange. It's called Rothschild Island. It's an island 39 kilometers, 24 miles long, mainly ice-covered, but surmounted by prominent peaks of Desco Mountains in Antarctica, 8 kilometers or 5 miles west of the north part of Alexander Island, in the north entrance to Wilkins Sound. You've just got to ask the question, what in the world is so important about the South Pole or about Antarctica that they are trying so hard to keep secret?
There are certain issues that people on the left and the right in American politics will never discuss. And the reason they won't discuss them is because they agree mutually. The Democrats and the Republicans agree on something, so they don't want to talk about it in public debate because it reveals the fact that they're basically the same. They only talk about things on which they disagree. Turns out that the things on which they agree are the most important things. The things in which they disagree are relatively minor.
We need to understand that we have been artificially divided for far too long. The global elites have divided us into Democrat and Republican, left and right, conservative and liberal. They have divided us with hot-button issues like abortion and gay rights and gun control and prayer in schools. And by doing so, they have given us, the electorate, the illusion that we have a choice, when in reality, both the Republican and Democratic parties are owned by the same global elites. And on issues that matter to those global elites, they act as one.
By the time you go to the polls and you put your pencil mark on the paper or punch the lever, whatever you do, the decisions are already made. The candidates have already been selected. And the work goes on there, is who selects the candidates that the people vote for? Who frames the issues that the people vote for? Voting is nothing. It's all done before that stage. This left-right paradigm is a political ploy. It works very well for those who know what they're doing. We find that the Republican Party and the Democrat Party both are pretty much in the hands of a relatively small group of people with a membership of about 4,000. It's called the Council on Foreign Relations. These are the people that are really pulling the strings in both the Republican and the Democrat Party.
We get a lot of advice from the council, so this will mean I won't have as far to go to be told what we should be doing and how we should think about the future.
People like Hillary Clinton know, even at that elevated position, Hillary Clinton, you'd say, was one of the big movers and shakers. Compared to the Council on Foreign Relations, she's not. She's a small fish. And she knows that she's got to get the approval of the CFR.
I had a friend, Nick Rockefeller, okay, who was one of the Rockefeller family. The ultimate goal that these people have in mind is to create a one world government. And this is given me straight from Rockefeller himself. This is what they want to accomplish.
Not just any world government, but a world government based on the model of collectivism. In other words, big, powerful, centralized world government. If it were a world government based on the principles of freedom and freedom of choice, freedom of culture, low intervention, if no intervention in the lives of normal human beings, it might be a wonderful thing, but that's not the kind of world government the left and the right have in mind. They're talking about total world government with all major decisions being made at the top and people at the bottom being peasants, basically, in a high-tech feudalism.
In a brief video introduced by the United Nations Secretary General Boutros Boutros-Ghali and containing some exceptional footage, the connection between the United Nations, New York City, and the Rockefeller Foundation is clearly drawn.
The future of this country and the lives of our children and our children's children are interwoven with the success of the United Nations. In it lies the hope of the people of the world. My father considers it a privilege to have had a part in the development of its permanent home. I'm glad to hand you, Mr. Lee, my father's check.
Thank you, Mr. Rockefeller.
For every single department of government you have on a federal, local, county, state, provincial level, the United Nations had an equivalent department to deal with everything. It was already set up, in fact, to be global government. H.G. Wells said at the League of Nations, which was the embryo for the United Nations, he said, this is the nucleus of the world governments, when eventually all laws will come from there, be passed and signed into law by treaty of all the member countries. Eventually, we won't even have to go through the farce, and that's what it is, of voting in parties or candidates, because in the latter part of the 20th century and now into the 21st century, we're being trained, rather obviously, to simply accept rule by experts, rule by scientists, rule by professionals, and that's what they mean when they call governance.
2009 is also the first year of global governance, with the establishment of the G20 in the middle of the financial crisis. The climate conference in Copenhagen is another step towards the global management of our planet.
By order of the City of Pittsburgh Chief of Police, I hereby declare this to be an unlawful assembly.
If people would just engage a few more brain cells, open the eyes and look, they will see the scale of fascism, no other word for it, that we are being subjected to today.
I remember we had an FBI consultant on the picture telling me that they can use your ADT security box microphone to get your stuff that's going on in your house, or OnStar, they could shut your car down. And he told me that 1 in 5 phone calls that you make are recorded and logged. And I laughed at him, and then he played back a phone conversation I'd had 2 years prior to joining the picture, the FBI consultant. And it was like one of those phone calls, like, you know, what are you wearing type of things. Really? Yeah, so it was mad weird.
Wait,
but
so you mean they had a record of you from
2 years prior to me joining the picture?
Even being associated with the movie?
With the movie.
Well, that seems creepy.
It's extremely creepy.
Tim, is there any way, now obviously it was a voicemail, they could try to get the phone companies to give that up at this point, but if it's not a voicemail, it's just a conversation. There's no way they actually can find out what happened, right? Unless she tells them.
No, there is a way. We certainly have ways in national security investigations to find out exactly what was said in that conversation. It's not necessarily something that the FBI is going to want to present in court, but it may help lead the investigation and or lead the questioning of her.
So somewhere
we can
it's
certainly
being
find that out.
digitized, or they can actually get that. Because people were saying, look, that wouldn't be possible. It's pretty incredible what you're saying.
No, welcome to America. All of that stuff is being captured as we speak, whether we know it or like it or not.
Note to self, as Deb Farrick just said here, yeah.
First up tonight in the news, yes, the re-education camps do apply to American citizens. I understand this is shocking, but the time for denial is over. Yesterday, of course, we covered the leaked U.S. Army document that outlines the plan for re-education camps in America. I can't believe it either, but yes, they do use the word re-education, and they repeatedly refer to operations inside U.S. territory. Paul Watson has highlighted all the quotes about how the psychological operations officers are going to be brainwashing people in the camps, determining who needs to be indoctrinated, and on, all part of this Department of Defense document for internment and resettlement specialists. So it refers to in the document DCs, that's displaced citizens or civilian internees. It talks about things like implementing policies, quote, within U.S. territory. What we have here is the camps we've been sold under the guise of the war on terror now being legitimized for use with American citizens as they pass the National Defense Authorization Act, authorizing the indefinite detention of even American citizens without any due process. This is a slippery slide into tyranny, and these detainment camps are, of course, the end of the road for anything we can consider to be freedom. It's based on North Korean models, Soviet Gulag models, Nazi concentration camp models, and more, and they're really looking to bring it here.
I have 2 words for you: predator drones. You will never see it coming.
All collectivist systems eventually deteriorate into a police state because it's the only way you can hold it together.
My friendship with Nick Rockefeller was one where we expressed ideas to each other and thoughts and philosophies, and he wanted me to become part of what they were doing and for me to become a member of the CFR. And I used to say to him, what's the point of all this? You have all the money in the world you need. You have all the power you need. What's the point? You know, what's the end goal? And he said the end goal is to get everybody chipped, to control the whole society, to have the elite people controlling the world.
They talked about Pat running for president, and if he did that, I would be very supportive. But he'd have to shake a label that gets assigned to people like Pat who run for the presidency, and that is that he's a tool of the rich. I personally like that very much. My father told me that's the way the system is meant to work. You know, I think Pat's coming quickly. Soon, I think he's going to be in a position for the Trilateral Commission. And if he shows promise beyond that, there's Bilderberg. World control, Pat. Settle for nothing else.
At the top of this conspiracy are a handful of ultra-wealthy multi-billionaires in the world. Some of them have been conspiring for more than a century. Their tools are the Council on Foreign Relations, the Bilderbergers, the Trilateral Commission, and they have tools in other countries as well.
Now, they've taken over our government, both Republicans and Democrats. There's no difference anymore between the two parties. They control both parties. It doesn't matter to them which one wins, because who's ever running for president will be someone they anoint. And the fact of the matter happens to be that you can't win an election unless you have enough money to win. They make sure who gets the money.
And they've even written about it. There's a fellow by the name of Carol Quigley, and he wrote several books about this group of people and their origins and their roots coming from Europe and England in particular. And he comes to a very interesting point in one of his books where he says, okay, this is the way the real world is. He said, how is it that we collectivists, we elitists, how can we rule the world when at the same time we want to let the average person think that they're living in a, quote, democracy? And he answers the question brilliantly. He said, it's very simple. You've got to have two major political parties, and they'll both have the same major goals, the same basic fundamental principles, and they'll argue with each other on the surface with slogans and leadership and style and all of that sort of thing. He said, but we will control them both. There's the strategy. There's the whole scam behind this left-right paradigm. When you understand this history and this reality, you look at it and you say, well, yes, we've got a left wing and a right wing, but they're just opposite wings of the same ugly bird. And we have our cheerleaders, you know, the news commentators and the talk show hosts on the left and on the right, and they frame the debate. They won't let the American people debate the real issues. They won't let them even think about the real issues, which are we going to keep American sovereignty or not? Are we going to let the Federal Reserve System, which is a banking cartel, continue to run our government or not? They won't let us talk about those things.
Ron Paul, what's your perspective on how the media has been ignoring him and demonizing him?
It's fascinating. I must say, the more I listen to and the more I read what Ron Paul has to say, the more fascinated and the more respect I have for this guy, because this guy's got courage. He understands that people want to be set free from big government, and he's not, you know, he's not scared of taking on any issue at all. And you know, I watch him. There was one of the primaries the other day where Ron Paul got 27%, an amazing figure, and yet the BBC virtually refused to even admit the fact that he's actually contesting the race. And I understand that many conventional parts of the U.S. media have been the same.
And by the way, this pretending Ron Paul doesn't exist for some reason has been going on for weeks.
A new Gallup survey showing Rick Perry running second to Mitt Romney, knocking down Iowa favorite Michelle Bachmann to fourth.
Behind who? Fourth behind who? How did Libertarian Ron Paul become the 13th floor in a hotel?
And it's kind of, you get a Ron Paul figure that comes along and challenges basic assumptions. And perhaps, to some extent, I've tried to do some of the same things over on this side of the Atlantic. And it's like a media blackout.
That tells you there's the evidence that it's controlled.
The owners of this country are the voters of this country.
You're wrong about that, my friend.
Aren't the owners of this country the voters in this country who elected George Bush?
No, they're not. Listen, politics, these elections are a charade. It is a charade.
Okay.
It is, they are meant to... Well, I'll tell you, listen, just listen for a minute. Learn a little something. The elections and politicians are in place in order to give Americans the illusion that they have freedom of choice. You don't really have choice in this country.
This is not a party issue. This is not a left-right issue. The question is not, should we have big government or little government? The question is, who should government serve? And it should serve the people. And it hasn't been doing it, and it still isn't doing it. And changing from Republican to Democrat or Democrat to Republican is not going to change that.
So that's the problem. As long as we depend on the phony wrestlers and depend upon their well-paid cheerleaders in the media to keep us focused on secondary issues, we're never going to get out of this mess.
The election is being rigged by corrupt media.
The corrupt media is trying to do everything in their power to stop our movement.
The crooked Hillary Clinton campaign and the mainstream media, which they control and use quite viciously. It's a rigged system. It's a rigged election. We're going to beat the rigged system. We're going to beat the rigged election.
Today is the best evidence ever that we've seen that our system is absolutely, totally rigged. It's rigged.
First of all, it's rigged. And I'm afraid the election's going to be rigged. I have to be honest.
The whole thing is one big fix. It's one big fix. It's one big ugly lie. It's one big fix.
You know, I've mentioned a few times before that Trump has a way of putting truth in plain sight and spinning it into the biggest lie ever, and the presidential election was definitely one of those times. Special thanks to YouTube channel Brandon Wright for the clip I just showed you, and I love that he chose to end the montage on that last clip, "It's one big fix." So I know I'm like 6 weeks late on this, but the lead up to the election was one giant fake out. Non-stop talk about Hillary's camp rigging the election, the Russians getting involved, all this cyber hacking, and this clown wins no problem. In fact, he walked through the primaries, the election, and the recent electoral vote with no problems whatsoever. So yeah, it's one big fix, it's rigged, but it was scripted for him to win. And you know the shock that so many people were in. The reactionary diatribes online were suffocating, and more than ever, both sides want you to take responsibility for the weight of your vote or non-vote. And it begs the question, who did you vote for? Of course, Donald was telling us all along that it didn't matter. He was telling us that it's one big fix because it's a one-party system. Your vote doesn't count. But it also brings up another point. Who exactly is it that's behind the curtain? And what are they doing? So when I see a picture like this from about a month ago when they shook hands in that photo opportunity, I basically see something like this. And if you remember, I'm talking about the Marvel movies that created that internet meme, Hail Hydra. And I'm not just having a little bit of fun there, we'll get back to that later. There is seriously a fascist element hidden within our government running the show. So it's no surprise that within 10 minutes of logging onto my computer back on November 9th, I was hit by this imagery. So I snagged a few of their promos, which I'll play back in a moment. You'll see how blatant the messaging is. On all three of those promos, you'll see a December 16th date. That's the start of their second season. Beyond that, really pay attention to what these ads are telling us, especially right around Election Day. So these are visions of what's coming in our near future, that authoritarian police state that truthers have warned about for years. And much of the public is becoming aware of that possibility through Trump's election and his association with the alt-right. Personally, I'm surrounded by people who are utterly terrified by this vision. The false awakening that I've talked about all year is taking shape. But below all that, of course, is another truth. This corrupt system already exists, and these images are already true. The fascist element behind our government is merely stepping out into the daylight to reveal itself. So not many spoilers here, but this show is one that mirrors our reality pretty closely. The basic premise involves a generation of people in the early 1960s waking up to the fact that the outcome of World War II was a lie and that their world is a sham. In their world, the Axis powers have somehow won the war and outright control America. So it's in a mirroring of our own reality. And in the upper left corner, I don't know if you've watched the show, but there's a film reel getting passed around. It has footage revealing that their history is a sham and that the war went differently than they were told. And in that scene where this girl's watching it, they really hone in on her eyeballs and the projector lens. And those are two symbols that are hugely important. It's all about projection and perception. It's all about people choosing to see what they want to see in the world around them. And overwhelmingly, people choose to think that they are free when they are not. So if you go to their Facebook page and scroll through it, it's one piece of truth after another in plain sight. And here's one from July 4th. Freedom is in the eye of the beholder, Independence Day. And you got somebody who's completely distracted by the facade of society, all the symbols, the advertisements, essentially the Matrix. And they also use projection to tell us in our own world what's coming. And you remember last year they wrapped an entire train in all this imagery. Now this one was so blatant they had to take it down. But what I'm saying is all this programming has been building for years, and it preps viewers to become more responsive when the real threat shows up in the future. And like I've pointed out before, Trump is a walking projection. The image of Hitler and Hitler's rise to power has come up time and again in relation to the guy, and not by accident. Whether it's the frightening side, the clear mirroring of history, or the humorous side, we've been surrounded by all these swastikas for a long time, and it's a lot like the 1930s Germany where they fell into an artificial bubble of a reality. And no kidding, all this together is really hypnotic. They've been dangling this right in front of us. And again, here's the dustbin of history-like quality to it. This quote right here, our history is being used to project our future. All right, so here's the thumbnail from that video. I just want to point this out. I was pretty much spot on with this visual. It's from a video that I posted back in March, and it's called Donald Trump, Civil War and Secret Societies, America's House of Cards. And I never predicted that Trump would take the White House, but I was paying attention to all the visuals they were sending to us, and it only made sense that I came up with this thumbnail at the end of the video. House of Trump, upside down flag, signaling distress, and it's about a divided nation. 7.5 months later, this is on our newsstands, House of Horrors, upside down flag, Trump seizes divided states of America. And what they're saying is a house divided cannot stand. And ever since doing that video, I've noticed every Nazi story that's popped up in front of me. So when I started this presentation like a month and a half ago, I went back and found the first news story I could think of, which was this one from late September. And I chose it for its symbolic nature, Nazi time capsule unearthed in Poland, because again, we're digging up the past and raising awareness of a very old and very real threat. And as always, it's not just about Nazis, it's about Hitler's rise to power. He's talking to a disillusioned or disempowered populace that wants to return to greatness. You've seen that story 100 times, how they keep mirroring Trump and Hitler. So is it any wonder that this came up more recently with Time magazine? And I'm not going to add any new thoughts on this one, it just belongs in this presentation, but again, they're back to back, they're mirroring each other, and that's not by accident. And all throughout the campaign we saw stuff like this so that you wouldn't forget, because it's becoming a very real threat in everyone's minds. Here is Lady Gaga sending mixed signals at a Hillary rally right before the election. So of course, conservatives attacked it, liberals defended it, everyone defends their side of the aisle. Now this one was interesting, this next one. After I saw those advertisements for the man in the high castle, I sat back and was like, just give it 5-10 minutes. I know something else is going to pop up. It's one of those days. 5-10 minutes later, this came up on the screen. So, November 9th, 1938. Today is the 78th anniversary of Kristallnacht, which is kind of a dark joke I would roll my eyes at if I read it in a novel. Again, the lines between fiction and reality are blurring. And Kristallnacht is the night of broken glass, when a bunch of German citizens were incited to go out and smash a bunch of Jewish storefronts. And so is it any wonder that exactly 78 years later to the day, we had similar visions going on in our own backyard? Now, we're not all out there attacking Jews, but it's bringing up that, it's eliciting that same visual that there's an authoritarian power coming out, and it's going to bring out every prejudice that America has right now, setting us against one another. And since the election, a lot of stuff like this has been popping up on my screen. And this is the programming really taking hold on people. So we have this tweet here. Ever wonder what it'd be like to go back in time and help fight Nazis, support civil rights era, resist native genocide? Now's your chance. We got this article right here, white nationalists, alt-right, if you see a Nazi, say Nazi. And she's borrowing from the if you see something, say something campaign. So I scrolled through this article really quick, and of course it didn't take long to see what she was after. Just a snippet. Given the close ties between the alt-right and Trump's cabinet, how is the top story on every front page not some version of neo-Nazis attempting to seize control of American government? Meanwhile, over here, almost on the same day, fighting Nazis is an American tradition. Stop the alt-right. So you can see how people are primed and ready to accept this because they've been seeing it in their entertainment and in their news for, honestly, for years now. So we're going to go to one of those movies right now. And the movie I want to talk about is Captain America: The Winter Soldier. And this is one of those Marvel movies that puts a lot of truth in plain sight, like they all do. But in this movie, the symbol of America, Captain America, finds out that a fascist Nazi element known as Hydra is embedded deep within S.H.I.E.L.D., which is basically the military-industrial complex. So these members of Hydra hide in plain sight and greet each other with the phrase, "Hail Hydra," like I showed you earlier. And you'll remember this is a popular internet meme from a couple of years ago that allowed the sleeping masses to take part in the joke. And that's one of the side effects of putting the truth in plain sight. Done properly, it puts people deeper to sleep. If you try to tell them Nazis or Satanists are embedded deep within our own government right now, they'll just completely laugh at you. They'll remember those memes. It's very easy to make fun of. So this section gets very dense, but I really want to bring up this main point. And it's all about the duality game, where evil latches itself onto something good. And it does that in a fight so that the two get mixed together, and when it's time for evil to take a fall, it pulls something good down with it. And I'm going to make a huge point out of that later. So through compartmentalization, numerous elements of S.H.I.E.L.D. have no idea who's in charge of what, who they're working for at a given time, and all that. Halfway through the movie, Captain America finds a secret military bunker that has yet another secret bunker underneath it. So there's layers upon layers to these organizations. A lot of people don't know who they're really working for. At the bottom, it's discovered that a character named Dr. Zola, who was a scientist for Hydra in World War II, has survived as a computer program. His monologue reveals that Hydra, during World War II, learned that it could not subdue the world with war outright. Humanity always fights back against an overt enemy. Remember that when I talk about the police state and the revolution that's going to be used on us again. We're supposed to fight against this authoritarian state. So Hydra learned that they had to convince the world to give up its freedom gradually, which we know all about. Through Operation Paperclip, Zola was able to come to America, create a parasite organization within S.H.I.E.L.D. Over time, they gradually overtook the joint, sowing seeds of division and chaos throughout the world. This is representative of an internal struggle that apparently happened within our own government, which allowed fascists to get embedded into very high places. More importantly, this is what I really want to get to, they go on to mention that S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra are two sides of the same coin that is going out of currency. And to get rid of the evil that is Hydra, both sides have to go. And that's the Hegelian dialectic that we talk about so much. If you look at the Hydra logo, the design hides a couple of 666s in plain sight. And I noticed that if you split the logo down the middle, you'll see that they mirror each other and they oppose one another. And this is evil fighting itself in a controlled battle to advance a larger agenda. So one more movie, James Bond's Spectre, which came out a year later, is pretty much the exact same plot, or at least the exact same premise. In Bond's world, he discovers that there's a secret, shadowy organization that has its tentacles in all forms of government, particularly in the intelligence community. They're getting ready to launch a massive surveillance program to take down all of their enemies and to subdue humanity, and to effectively bring about a new world order. Same thing is happening in Captain America with Project Insight. It's no coincidence then that both of these organizations have just about the same logo. tying into that squid or octopus that the elite love so much. They have their tentacles in almost everything, and they're enveloping the world with it. So this was 2014, this is 2015. In 2013, I don't know if you know this or not, but the NSA and NASA announced that they launched a satellite called Enroll 39. And here's the catchphrase for the logo they came up with: "Nothing is beyond our reach," and it has the squid with its tentacles all over the globe. And it just happened to coincide with the time that Edward Snowden defected and released all that information. And I just want to point out real quick here, this is not how you keep a secret. This is how you make an announcement. So again, this is them coming out in the open and waving hello, saying, "We exist." This is why they're being cartoonishly sinister in their approach here. We know about these surveillance programs and all this other stuff because we're supposed to. So why is it? Why are they putting themselves out in the open? And the concept is called externalization of the hierarchy. And you've heard me say time and again that the system is exposing its own corruption. This is entirely what I'm talking about. I just relabeled this concept. And why they're doing it, spiritually they have to tell us what they're up to, which is all well and good, but they're using it to reach a far greater end. That's what I want to get to. They're going to use it to latch anything that's good about this world to something evil and flush it down the toilet. So in that scene I told you about earlier with Dr. Zola, he mentions in passing that if you cut one head off of the Hydra, one or two grow back in its place. He's referring to the ritualistic beheading of the Hydra. And to keep it really short, the elite control both sides of a given conflict to create a predetermined outcome. Usually someone needs to take the fall. Whoever's involved in the fight or knows about it needs to see a bad guy lose the fight. As such, one of the many heads of the Hydra is beheaded so everyone can have closure. And in the Captain America example, it's Hydra losing the fight, pulling S.H.I.E.L.D. down with it. Meanwhile, evil shapeshifts into a new form, replicates the same duality program all over again, advancing numerous agendas. Kudos to whoever came up with this spiral graphic right here. It's exactly what I had pictured in my mind when I went looking for it. So if you got anyone in your life who won't believe in something like that, it just sounds too stupid, it's right out of the movies, it would never happen. A lot of this stuff is public information. I'm not going to go into depth about Operation Paperclip. If they know those movies, tell them to go look up Reinhard Gehlen. He is everything I just talked about. One person surrounded himself with Nazi war criminals, created an entire intelligence apparatus that is still in effect today in Europe. So I want to end on this point, which is that most truthers out there seem to think that the fascist police state will be the new world order, when in fact it's a means to an end. If you've been awake for even 6 months, you know the basic premise of the revolution. The global elite are losing control and they don't like it. And the more truth that comes out about them, the more they'll need to clamp down on our rights and subdue us by force, taking us into global war and financial collapse. That's this section over here. The call for revolution is telling us that if we rise up and fight them, we can stop them. But if you look at their murals at the Denver International Airport, you can see that they know all about this awakening. They want it to happen. And you can see war personified coming in and slicing through society, killing peace, and later on, the world has conquered it and united under the banner of peace. So keeping it really simple, we're going to be put through a really dark phase. Having lost control, evil will come right out in the open and bear its fangs at humanity. They are forcing themselves out in the open where corruption can be seen. Now, keep in mind the union of opposites, where every truth gets paired with a lie and everything good is paired with something evil. The bigger and darker they go, the more truth they can misrepresent in the worst way possible. And this is why they're externalizing an overtly corrupt hierarchy. It has served its purpose and it needs to auto-destruct to bring in the new age. Like I said earlier, people need someone to resist and they need to see the bad guys take a dive. By the time that happens, they'll take down our current society with them and everything that was good about it. This is ritually beheading the Hydra. And it's all meant to prep survivors to accept peace at any cost and to bring about a false spiritual awakening. Will it be this simple? No. On the surface, it'll be chaotic and fragmented as possible. But you can see how we're being pitted against one another in this fight. Many people on the right think they're resisting the globalist agenda, and many people on the left think they're about to resist a fascist regime, at least here in America. Unfortunately, both sides are controlled by the same invisible powers. And this is why a very potent question is resurfacing. Which side of history will you choose to be on? It's what you call a loaded question. We're frequently told to take sides in every argument because whichever side you're on, the establishment has you in their narrative. That's the duality trap playing out endlessly. The only true fight is whether or not you stand with Jesus Christ, Yeshua, and stay true to the Scripture. Now, I personally believe Jesus will be misrepresented in the worst way possible during this time. That's why he warned us that all nations will eventually hate us for his namesake by the end. And I point you to Matthew chapter 24, verses 9 through 11 for that. And I have more thoughts on this, but they're going to have to wait for another time.
The food is exquisite.
And the view is beautiful, inspirational, nauseating.
There is absolutely no doubt that Donald Trump is supported, owned, and operated by the Zionist Jew power structure. It is a verifiable fact. It is a fact the mainstream media and mainstream alternative media alike will dare not touch. Anyone ignoring this fact and not exposing this is either incredibly naive or bought and paid for to sell you disinformation. Donald Trump is absolutely surrounded by and has appointed psychopathic neocons and Rothschild Zionists, yet many are in delusion and denial, largely in part due to their desperate desire for a savior, and this is what the elite have counted on. It is through this desperation and demoralization of a collective consciousness, sick and tired of a corrupt system and government, they were able to once again pull off another dog and pony show and manipulate people into believing that once again, things could be different this time. Through the obsolete and meaningless system of voting. Hope and Change 2.0. Unfortunately, this is just another case of meet the new boss, same as the old boss. We are led to believe that Trump is at war with the mainstream media and the establishment, a mainstream media that is mainly Zionist, Jewish owned and operated, another verifiable fact. Trump is also surrounded and supported by an endless stream of Ashkenazi Jews in his organizations and administration. He is, of course, a quote-unquote lifelong supporter and true friend of Israel, the largest terrorist state in the world. Sadly, most people do not realize that Israel and Mossad intelligence were key players in carrying out 9/11. If Trump truly was for the people, he would help expose the stranglehold of Israel and the Zionist power structure. Keep in mind, the Israel of the Bible is a completely different entity than the modern United Nations created state of Israel, which is a terrorist state of the New World Order. This is a distinction many indoctrinated Christians fail to grasp. America is just a puppet regime of Israel and Zion. A small fraction of the population are finally discovering that this Zionist apparatus controls our Federal Reserve System, corporations, Hollywood, and our media, and have our politicians in their back pockets. An even smaller fraction of the population understands that Trump would never get to where he is if he weren't owned and operated by these same powers. And as they say, the proof is in the pudding. In addition to Trump being a staunch Zionist supporter, all one needs to do is look at who surrounds and supports Donald Trump. Then you will understand how the media versus Trump narrative is just another ruse and Zionist script. The scripted battle between Trump and the Jewish-owned media was the key chessboard move to legitimizing Trump in the eyes of the demoralized populace. A demoralized populace who by now has little to no trust for the so-called dinosaur media. The idea that Trump is at war with a Jewish-owned media while simultaneously surrounded and supported by an army of them is as ridiculous and absurd as it can get, and isn't remotely believable to anyone aware of who really owns the media. Many have also been fooled into believing Trump has hinted at 9/11 truth, but this is nothing more than laughable to any real 9/11 researcher. What he has stated publicly on 9/11 thus far has been nothing but lies and misdirection. In addition to being friends with 9/11 perp Rudy Giuliani, Trump has focused on the limited hangout and misdirection angle of Saudi Arabia, which is what gatekeepers, disinfo agents, and the media focuses on, ignoring the huge elephant in the room, Israel. Trump has publicly stated that he saw quote-unquote thousands of Muslim Americans celebrating the 9/11 attacks in New Jersey, which is the biggest lie imaginable. The real truth Trump or your mainstream media will never mention is the only people actually documented celebrating the 9/11 event were a small handful of undercover Israeli Mossad agents who had been in the US for months and some for years, whose operation was busted by a nationwide FBI sting and were captured on the George Washington Bridge with explosives in their van of their front company, Urban Moving Systems.
Favorite, the reports we're getting now, 2 or 3 men arrested on the New Jersey Parkway. Deborah, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. That is the information that I'm getting from 2 sources, that there was a van either on the New Jersey Turnpike or the Garden State Parkway, and that it was near the George Washington Bridge. There were 2 or 3 men who were in the van. The van was pulled over. It is not clear why the van was pulled over, but when it was, law enforcers found tons of explosives inside of the van. That is right now all I'm hearing, but again, 2 to 3 people in custody, and we are trying to get more information on that right now.
And word late tonight that 2 suspects are in FBI custody after a truckload of explosives was discovered around the George Washington Bridge. That bridge links New York to New Jersey over the Hudson River. Whether the discovery of those explosives had anything to do with other events of the day is unclear, but the FBI has 2 suspects in hand, said the truck load of explosives, enough explosives were in the truck to do great damage to the George Washington Bridge. But they arrested the 2 suspects and they're questioning them as we speak.
Since 9/11, we have thousands of pages of FBI, CIA, and DOJ reports documenting the arrests made on 9/11. The FBI report outlines the fact that the dancing Israelis were found to have taken 76 photographs, had maps, plane tickets, box cutters, and almost $5,000 in cash. In their 2004 civil lawsuit, the Israeli plaintiffs demanded their possessions and money back, in addition to many other demands. The declassified FBI reports also outlined the little-known fact that additional Israelis driving vans were arrested by police in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and New Hampshire after the 9/11 attack. Numerous trucks and vans with explosives were stopped by police on 9/11. And, as outlandish and unbelievable as it may sound, one of the vans had a mural painted on the side of it depicting a plane crashing into the Twin Towers. This is confirmed by 2 sources. 1, the New York Police radio transmission recordings from the day of 9/11. 2, it was also discussed by U.S. Transportation Secretary Norman Mineta himself in his February 2006 official report titled Saving City Lifelines, Lessons Learned in the 9/11 Terrorist Attacks. The report stated, quote, "There were continuing moments of alarm. A panel truck with a painting of a plane flying into the World Trade Center was stopped near the temporary command post. It proved to be rented to a group of ethnic Middle Eastern people who did not speak English. Fearing that it might be a truck bomb, the NYPD immediately evacuated the area, called out the bomb squad, and detained the occupants until a thorough search was made. The vehicle was found to be an innocent delivery truck." End quote. The report, of course, makes absolutely no mention of the truck exploding or the fact that these Middle Eastern people had actually been Israeli spies.
Spencer, I got a message on that plane. It's a big truck with a mural painted of an airplane diving into New York City and exploding. I don't know what's in the truck. The truck is in between 6th and 7th on King Street. All right, 10-4, I'll send the issue in the bomb squad there for Westgate. The bird? What, the risk message? That's fine. With a mural painted, airplane diving into New York, blowing up. 2 men got out of the truck, ran away from it. We got those 2 under. That's good. Are you holding those 2 guys, Kate?
I've got so many questions, but you are vindicated. This has got to be the 50th time the last 6 months on the radical Muslims celebrating, not just in New Jersey, but New York, Palestine, all over. What do you have to say? They're still attacking you, though we've got Dan Rather on video, we've got New York Post, we've got Washington Post, we've got, I mean, what's going on here? on the radical Muslims celebrating, not just in New Jersey, but New York, Palestine, all over. What do you have to say? They're still attacking you, though we've got Dan Rather on video, we've got New York Post, we've got Washington Post, we've got, I mean, what's going on here?
Well, I took a lot of heat, and I was very strong on it.
Of course, even though Israel's involvement in 9/11 is now documented, proven, and verifiable fact, this information has been well swept under the radar. Most Americans will never realize what took place regarding the many Israeli spies arrested and detained on 9/11, only to be later released and sent back to Israel. This information will never be mentioned or covered by the mainstream media, let alone Donald Trump, and that is because he is obviously in bed with Israel and the Mossad. Michael Aboud, Communications Coordinator, Donald J. Trump for President, Sephardic Jew. Paul Eschleitner, Chairman, Supervisory Board, Deutsche Bank, Donald Trump's largest lender, Ashkenazi Jew. Miriam Adelson, Endorser, Donald J. Trump for President, Donor, Future 45 PAC, Finance Vice Chairman, Trump Presidential Inaugural Committee, Ashkenazi Jew. Sheldon Adelson, Endorser, Donald J. Trump for President, Donor, Future 45 PAC, Finance Vice Chairman, Trump Presidential Inaugural Committee, Ashkenazi Jew. Paul Atkins, Member, President Trump's Strategic and Policy Forum, Ashkenazi Jew. Brian Ballard, Finance Vice Chairman, Trump Presidential Inaugural Committee, Ashkenazi Jew. Elliot Broidy, Vice Chairman, Trump Victory Committee, Finance Vice Chairman, Trump Presidential Inaugural Committee, Ashkenazi Jew. Safra Katz, Executive Committee Member, Trump Presidential Transition Team, Ashkenazi Jew. Michael Cohen, Executive Vice President and Special Counsel, the Trump Organization, Ashkenazi Jew. Gary Cohn, Director, United States National Economic Council, Ashkenazi Jew. Delos Cosgrove, Member, President Trump's Strategic and Policy Forum, Ashkenazi Jew. Gil Deser, President, Trump Desert Development, Ashkenazi Jew. Michael Deser, Founder, Trump Desert Development, Ashkenazi Jew. Louis Eisenberg, Chairman, Trump Victory Committee, Finance Co-Chairman, Trump Presidential Inaugural Committee, Ashkenazi Jew. Boris Epstein, Senior Advisor, Donald J. Trump for President, Ashkenazi Jew. Stephen Feinberg, Donor, Trump Victory Fund, Member, Trump Economic Advisory Council, Ashkenazi Jew. Lawrence Fink, Member, President Trump's Strategic and Policy Forum, Ashkenazi Jew. Alan Fishman, Chairman, Ladder Capital, Donald Trump's second largest lender, Ashkenazi Jew. David Friedman, Co-Chairman, Israel Advisory Committee for Donald Trump, United States Ambassador to Israel, Ashkenazi Jew. Samuel Fox, Vice Chairman, Trump Victory Committee, Ashkenazi Jew. Alan Garten, Executive Vice President and General Counsel, the Trump Organization, Ashkenazi Jew. Bruce Gelb, Endorser, Donald J. Trump for President, Ashkenazi Jew. Michael Glassner, Deputy Campaign Manager and National Political Director, Donald J. Trump for President. Special Advisor for Operations, Trump Presidential Transition Team, Ashkenazi Jew. Lawrence Glick, Executive Vice President of Strategic Development, the Trump Organization, Ashkenazi Jew. Jason Greenblatt, Executive Vice President and Chief Legal Officer, the Trump Organization, Co-Chairman, Israel Advisory Committee for Donald J. Trump, President Trump's Special Representative for International Negotiations, Ashkenazi Jew. Vincent Harris, former Digital Strategy Manager, Donald J. Trump for President, Ashkenazi Jew. Thomas Hicks Sr., Finance Vice Chairman, Trump Presidential Inaugural Committee, Ashkenazi Jew. Carl Icahn, Endorser, Donald J. Trump for President, Special Advisor to the President for Regulatory Reform, Ashkenazi Jew. Gail Icahn, Finance Vice Chairman, Trump Presidential Inaugural Committee, Ashkenazi Jew. Robert Eager, Member, President Trump's Strategic and Policy Forum, Ashkenazi Jew. Travis Kalanick, Member, President Trump's Strategic and Policy Forum, Ashkenazi Jew. Peter Calico, Donor, Trump Victory Fund, Ashkenazi Jew. Daniel Kowalski, Deputy Policy Director, Donald J. Trump for President, Member, Trump Economic Advisory Council, Ashkenazi Jew. Charles Kushner, endorser, Donald J. Trump for president, donor, Make America Great Again PAC, Ashkenazi Jew. Jared Kushner, senior advisor, Donald J. Trump for president, executive committee member, Trump presidential transition team, Ashkenazi Jew. Yael Kushner, Ivanka Trump, executive vice president, the Trump Organization, senior advisor, Donald J. Trump for president, executive committee member, Trump presidential transition team, Orthodox Jewish convert. Bennett LeBeau, donor, Trump Victory Fund, Ashkenazi Jew. Richard Lesser, member, President Trump's Strategic and Policy Forum, Ashkenazi Jew. Ronald Lieberman, executive vice president of management and development, the Trump Organization, Ashkenazi Jew. Howard Lorber, donor, Trump Victory Fund, member, Trump Economic Advisory Council, Ashkenazi Jew. David Malpass, member, Trump Economic Advisory Council, Ashkenazi Jew. Douglas Manchester, donor, Make America Great Again PAC, Ashkenazi Jew. Bernard Marcus, endorser, Donald J. Trump for president, donor, Rebuilding America Now PAC, donor, Make America #1 PAC, Ashkenazi Jew. Rebecca Mercer, donor, Make America #1 PAC, executive committee member, Trump presidential transition team, Ashkenazi Jew. Robert Mercer, donor, Make America #1 PAC, Ashkenazi Jew. Amanda Miller, vice president of marketing, the Trump Organization, Ashkenazi Jew. Eli Miller, chief operating officer, Donald J. Trump for president, Ashkenazi Jew. Jason Miller, senior communications advisor, Donald J. Trump for president, communications director, Trump presidential transition team, communications director and assistant to the president, the White House, Ashkenazi Jew. Stephen Miller, national policy director, Donald J. Trump for president, national policy director, Trump presidential transition team, senior advisor to the president for policy, the White House, Ashkenazi Jew. Stephen Mnuchin, donor, Trump Victory Fund, member, Trump Economic Advisory Council, national finance chairman, Donald J. Trump for president, executive committee member, Trump presidential transition team, secretary, United States Department of Treasury, Ashkenazi Jew. Elon Musk, member, President Trump's Strategic and Policy Forum, Ashkenazi Jew. Samuel Nunberg, former policy advisor, Donald J. Trump for president, Ashkenazi Jew. David Orwitz, senior vice president of acquisitions and development, the Trump Organization, Ashkenazi Jew. Jeffrey Palmer, donor, Rebuilding America Now PAC, Ashkenazi Jew. John Paulson, donor, Trump Victory Fund, member, Trump Economic Advisory Council, Ashkenazi Jew. Laura Perlmutter, donor, Trump Victory Fund, finance vice chairman, Trump Presidential Inaugural Committee, Ashkenazi Jew. Andrew Puzder, secretary, United States Department of Labor, Ashkenazi Jew. Stuart Rauer, endorser, Donald J. Trump for president, Ashkenazi Jew. Richard Roberts, vice chairman, Israel Advisory Committee for Donald Trump, Ashkenazi Jew. George Ross, executive vice president and senior counsel, the Trump Organization, Ashkenazi Jew. Wilbur Ross Jr., billionaire investor and former senior managing director of Rothschilds Incorporated for 25 years, Secretary of Commerce, donor, Trump Victory Fund, member, Trump Economic Advisory Council, Secretary, United States Department of Commerce, Ashkenazi Jew. Stephen Roth, donor, Trump Victory Fund, member, Trump Economic Advisory Council, Ashkenazi Jew. Keith Schiller, Director of Security, the Trump Organization, Ashkenazi Jew. Stephen Schwartzman, Chairman, President Trump's Strategic and Policy Forum, Ashkenazi Jew. Melvin Sembler, Vice Chairman, Trump Victory Committee, Finance Vice Chairman, Trump Presidential Inaugural Committee, Ashkenazi Jew. Yaakov Shahem, endorser, Donald J. Trump for President, donor, Trump Victory Fund, Ashkenazi Jew. Mark Short, Senior Advisor to Vice President-elect, Trump Presidential Transition Team, Ashkenazi Jew. Peter Thiel, endorser, Donald J. Trump for President, donor, Trump Victory Fund, donor, Rebuilding America Now PAC, donor, Make America #1 PAC, executive committee member, Trump Presidential Transition Team, Ashkenazi Jew. Lara Trump, endorser, Donald J. Trump for President, Ashkenazi Jew. Vanessa Trump, endorser, Donald J. Trump for President, Ashkenazi Jew. Kevin Warsh, member, President Trump's Strategic and Policy Forum, Ashkenazi Jew. Mark Weinberger, member, President Trump's Strategic and Policy Forum, Ashkenazi Jew. Ronald Weiser, Vice Chairman, Trump Victory Committee. Finance Vice Chairman, Trump Presidential Inaugural Committee, Ashkenazi Jew. Andrew Weiss, Executive Vice President, the Trump Organization, Ashkenazi Jew. Alan Weisselberg, Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer, the Trump Organization, Ashkenazi Jew. Lawrence Weitzner, Advisor, Donald J. Trump for President, Ashkenazi Jew. Stephen Witkoff, Donor, Trump Victory Fund, Ashkenazi Jew. Stephen Wynn, Financial Vice Chairman, Trump Presidential Inaugural Committee, Ashkenazi Jew. Richard Lefrak, Donor, Trump Victory Fund, Ashkenazi Jew. Daniel Yergin, Member, President Trump's Strategic and Policy Forum, Ashkenazi Jew. So now you can see how absurd the notion that the Jewish-owned media really hates Donald Trump, when they actually love him. Take CNN for example, all Jewish-owned and run. The major shareholder for CNN is Aviv Nevo, an Israeli billionaire venture capitalist. Head of CNN is Zionist Jeff Zucker, along with the many Zionist Jew propagandists such as Jake Tapper, Wolf Blitzer, Larry King, and many more. But you get the point. The reason the media has been quote-unquote against Donald Trump is because that was the Zionist script that has been written. This glaring contradiction is how you can see through this elaborate charade and deception of Trump, the so-called anti-establishment figure. Now you know when you see him call out CNN or any other mainstream media outlet, it is a ruse and nothing more than Zionist scripted entertainment and distraction for a dumbed down and ignorant populace. The bottom line is, you cannot be anti-establishment, anti-globalist, and be pro-Zionist, pro-Israel. This is the real truth. And until we see otherwise, nothing will ever change.
It is time to drain the swamp in Washington, D.C. Her papers went out to all her friends at the banks, Goldman Sachs, and everybody else.
President-elect Donald Trump turned to former Goldman Sachs banker and movie financier Steve Mnuchin to be the next Treasury Secretary.
We're working on the economic plan and the transition, making sure we get the biggest tax bill passed.
The 53-year-old was Trump's campaign finance chief, building a network of donors to support Mr. Trump's general election campaign. Mr. Mnuchin has strong ties to Wall Street after a 17-year career at Goldman Sachs, where he pioneered block trading, the selling of big chunks of shares at once. Mr. Mnuchin was born to a Jewish family in 1962, and his father also worked at Goldman Sachs.
It's official. President-elect Donald Trump has picked Gary Cohn to head the National Economic Council. Gary Cohn's also going to be an assistant to the president for economic policy. If you've been watching CNBC, you already knew this because we've been reporting this for what feels like days, but now it is. We will miss Gary at Goldman Sachs, but I believe the American people and the president-elect are fortunate that he has chosen to serve his country. I am confident that Gary will bring his many talents and expertise to the White House and will do his part to make our economy stronger for all Americans. That coming from Lloyd Blankfein, the CEO of Goldman Sachs.
It's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Because you'd be in jail. I didn't think I'd say this, but I'm going to say it, and I hate to say it, but if I win, I am going to instruct my Attorney General to get a special prosecutor to look into your situation.
Everything he just said is absolutely false.
Hillary has worked very long and very hard over a long period of time, and we owe her a major debt of gratitude for her service to our country. I mean that very sincerely.
Are you going to ask for a special prosecutor to investigate Hillary Clinton over her emails?
Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to think about it. She did some bad things. I mean, she did some bad things.
A special prosecutor?
I don't want to hurt them. I don't want to hurt them. They're good people. Hillary Clinton, commonly referred to as Crooked Hillary.
She's crooked as a $3 bill.
She's married to an abuser, a woman claimed rape, and all sorts of things. I mean, horrible things.
She should be in prison. She's the queen of corruption. She's a disaster. She's a dangerous liar. She's the devil.
She's a monster. Hillary Clinton, I think, is a terrific woman. I mean, I'm a little biased because I've known her for years. I live in New York, she lives in New York, and I've known her and her husband for years, and I really like them both a lot. And I think she really works hard, and I think she, again, she's given an agenda. It's not all of her, but I think she really works hard, and I think she does a good job. I just like her. I like her, and I like her husband. You'll be looking at the record of Hillary Clinton, and how did she do as Secretary of State? Probably above and beyond everybody else and everything else.
The United States is in a perpetual state of war because the bankers control the politicians and they read the script as given to them by the banksters, and they make huge amounts of money off of this. What this gentleman is saying about the United States not wanting war, not wanting to get involved is like Iraq 2.0. It's a repeat of the same rubbish that was said, oh, we don't want war, war is a last resort. That's absolutely untrue. It's a lie. Those that are in government are nothing more than prostitutes who are carrying out the orders of those who are in charge of them, and those that are in charge want another war. And part of that is what we discussed earlier, the Greater Israel Project, to destabilize any Arab regime which might have any kind of autonomy and self-determination. Any regime in the Arab world that is not an absolute puppet cannot be tolerated. And who are the nations that we target? Those that are not puppets. We don't target those like the Saudi regime, which is the biggest human rights violator in that region. It's cutting off people's heads in public, cutting off hands. It is the most grotesque regime on the planet, and yet we give that regime weapons, and it's no problem whatsoever. The duplicity and hypocrisy of the United States and the West can't even be measured. It is so enormous. And these mouthpieces, such as this gentleman in Washington, is only doing a disservice to himself and his country. And the fact is that American sons and daughters will get involved in this yet again, and these chicken hawks who are pretending to care about the Syrian people are going to be sacrificing not their own sons and daughters. I would like this man to send his sons and daughters and his grandchildren off to Syria when this turns into a greater conflict, because this is what we're flirting with, is a world war, a third world war. This is not a joke. We are flirting with a third world war on the basis that apparently we care so much about the Syrian people, just like we care so much about the Iraqi people and the Afghani people. The only people that buy this sort of stuff are either bought-off prostitutes or the dumbest of the dumb. And we're also led to believe that Assad is the dumbest idiot dictator on the planet now, isn't he? Because he invited UN inspectors to come in, and he brought them in. On the very day that they come in, he decides to attack his own people 10 miles away from where the inspectors arrive. This is beyond ridiculous, and the only people that buy this, again, are bought-off prostitutes or the dumbest of the dumb.
Brothers and sisters, Brother John here, Watchman for that great day. I'd like to bless you with some thought on the current position in this year that we are at. And that is today in Israel, East Coast time. All right, we're looking at New York time, my time, as 11 a.m. And 11 a.m. this morning will be the sundown in Israel, which means that their Purim will start today at 11 a.m. our time, East Coast time. It's sundown in Israel, which makes it the 11th of March, which is the evening of Purim. So between now and tomorrow, there is a good chance that we could be raptured out, because we're looking at any time this year, of course. All right, this is the acceptable year of the Lord, Isaiah 61, verse 2. And it's exciting. It's an exciting time to be alive in Christ and aware of Christ and knowing Him as your Savior and praying and worshiping Him. And so the whole thing that I'd like to share with you is that this is a time that we should be watching, as I've referenced in my past videos, all right? As far as the time is their feast, all right? It's their feast. It's not a moed, but it's a chag, all right? And it's also a mishtah, all right? Because it's a drink feast, a banqueting, and it's also a pilgrim feast, which is the same thing. Every year they celebrate Purim. So a lot to do. There's a lot of going on with the thought process as far as Esther, going into the king's house and all of this. So just to give you the heads up and be aware that it can happen any day now. It's not necessarily have to be on a particular feast day, okay? But it will happen. Most likely, it will happen this year, but most likely I'm looking at before May the 30th or May the 31st, all right? Because of something that I just saw and went over the other night, and I'd like to read that to you now. So we're in Daniel. Here it is again, Daniel 9:26, all right? And it's actually after you get done reading about 9:25, where it says, "Know therefore and understand from the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem unto Messiah is written." The word Messiah is written in the King James and I believe other translations, but I only follow the King James. But the Messiah is a translation. The translators translated anointed, all right? So it has to do with unto the anointed, and then the prince is the Nagid, all right? So it's an anointed Magid, or Nagid, I'm sorry. The anointed Nagid, okay? Anointed prince, leader, ruler, okay? So we know that Jesus came, and he was the Messiah. He came at the 7:62, all right? He came at that time, leaving a balance of 7 years, 1-7, okay? So when he came, it was 483 years, because it was 7 times 70, right? 7 times 70, 490. When he came at 483 and finished everything at the cross, he left 1-7. So that's important to know. So there was 1-7 left, right? 1-7, which is where we get our 7-year tribulation time period from, okay? So when you read down and you have, from the time of Jerusalem and unto the anointed Nagid, okay? Now we have to look at Daniel with a different set of, a different thought, okay? Because Jesus did the first reference to the weeks, the first reference of the Feast of Weeks, or weeks, right? 70 weeks, all right? That's Daniel 9:24. 70 weeks are determined. And so when Jesus did that, he finished off leaving the 7, so that now we don't have that 7 times 7D anymore. There's not 490 from the time, let's say, 1947, when the decree went forth to rebuild Jerusalem. In our time, it wouldn't be 490 years. Jesus already finished that, you see? So there's a 7-year balance left when he left, when he finished it at the cross, all right? Now, there's only two other ways. Once you have the 70 times 7 crossed off your list, then you only have 7, which is 1-7. It would be a multiple of 7, which was the 490. It would be 1-7, which is a singular 7, and it will also be understood as Feast of Weeks. So there's only 2 left: Feast of Weeks, which is going to happen, and a 1-7, which is going to happen. So the Feast of Weeks, of course, I've shared with you before, ends on May 31st, June 1st this year, in the Jubilee, okay? That is also connected and determined upon thy people, Daniel's people, which are the Jewish people, and the city, the holy city, Jerusalem, okay? So it has to do with Jerusalem and the holy city and the people thereof and about it, okay? Just like where Jesus said, when those that are in Judea see the abomination that maketh desolate, then they should flee. But they have to be able to see something if they're in Judea, right? And Judea is the area around the Temple Mount. That's Judea. Judea, Samaria, West Bank, all right? All of that. So, get back and not too far off of what we're looking at here. So, what we have is a 7-week period and a 62-week period. Now, there's many teachings on 7 weeks and 62, and there's the 7 weeks, which is times 7, which is 49. Okay, we have all that. That goes from 1967 till now, okay, till 2016, and now we're in the 50th, okay?
So there's one. Just one way of looking at it. The 7 weeks. Isaac Newton said that 7 weeks would come after the 62. All right, 62 weeks would be before, but it's written as 7 and 62. All right, so there's a lot of ways to play the numbers, and yet they all come out to this time. That's what's amazing. No matter which way you count from, they all come out to this time now. This is the way we're pointing at. This is the Jubilee. Okay, that's what's exciting. We're in the year of Jubilee. Hallelujah. Okay, that's exciting by itself, and to know that this is the year is even better, and more. When you get confident of that this is the year, then you have your parameters set. We can't go past, all right, on the absolute farthest point, we cannot go past October the 3rd, which is the 10th of Nisan, all right? And the 10th of Nisan is when the trumpet was blown just last year for the beginning or the proclamation of the Jubilee year. All right, now, as Steve Fletcher has shown, the thought goes better to the idea that the proclamation or the proclaiming of the new year that was coming, the Jubilee year, and it would start at the first month, okay, on God's calendar, Nisan, all right, that's when it would start, you know, the Jubilee. So we can either be in it now from the time of the trumpets, or we can have not started it yet. And the start of the Jubilee, if it does start on Nisan, then it brings into the thought process that, like Brother Steve has shown and shared already, that wouldn't it be interesting? This is a great question, because I've contemplated this question for the last week since I saw Steve's video. I guess it was a few days ago anyway. So I've been thinking about this. Wouldn't it be interesting if from the time that Jesus came and rode in on the donkey on the 10th of Nisan, all right, to go to the cross after 4 more days, you know, finally after 4 days he was dead, and they put him in the tomb and he rose and all that. Wouldn't it be interesting is from the time that he came, right, Nisan 10, that would be the time that 7-year period started, okay? So where he left off, in other words, where it finished at the 483, it would start up again. So that makes a lot of sense. That's really doing a lot of, it's interesting. And it's also before Passover, which fits what I've shared already about Amos, right? That God will not pass over again. And in an acceptable year, this would have to be done, all right? To proclaim liberty to those that are captives. That's us, all right?
Okay, guys, I want to go over something real quick with you, and I want to make something pretty clear, just to have a real simple way to explain this. So based on the title of my video here, any way you cut it, it all comes down to Nisan 10, any way you cut it, okay? Nisan 10 is the day. Nisan 10 is the day. Okay, we're talking about the Jubilee years. And there's great discrepancy based on where the Jubilee year begins. Okay, people think that the Jubilee year begins in the fall. Okay, let's play that out, okay? For those who think that the Jubilee year begins in the fall, okay? Jubilee years begin in the fall, okay? Let's play this out. This one. Okay, Jubilee year begins in the fall. So here we go. 2016... October 2nd, Tishri 1. Is this the new year? This is the beginning of the Jubilee year? Was that the first month? Okay. Leviticus 25:9 says that the trumpet will sound on the 10th day of the 7th month.
That's Nissan 10. For those who believe that the Jubilee year begins in the fall, and that for the Jubilee years, Tishri is the first month, then let's just play that out. We have to go according to the Bible. If you think that Tishri is the first month, then Leviticus 25:9 says that the trumpet will sound, the trumpet of Jubilee will sound on the 10th day of the 7th month. What's that? Nissan 10. Nissan 10. Okay? There's no way to say that the beginning of the year is Tishri and the trumpet will sound in Tishri. I mean, you have to follow your thinking through and understand that either way the trumpet must sound on the 7th month of the 10th day. So if you believe that Tishri is the first month, how can the trumpet sound on Tishri 10? Isn't Tishri the first month? Okay, so Tishri, if you believe that the trumpet sounds, or if you believe that the beginning of the year is Tishri, then the trumpet will sound in the 7th month on the 10th day. Nissan 10. Okay, here's the day, Nissan 10. Either way you look at it. Now, what about if you believe that the Jubilee year begins in the spring? Okay. Let's walk this through now. Jubilee begins in the spring. Nisan is the first month, the beginning of the Jubilee. The trumpet will sound on Tishri 10. It's the 7th month, the 10th day. But let's look at Exodus chapter 12, and we'll see that in Exodus chapter 12, that the Lord told Moses that the spring feasts would mark the beginning of the year. So we have Nisan or Aviv as the first month. Okay. The trumpet will sound in Tishri 10. But the Jubilee year will begin in Nisan. And Exodus 12 shows us from the very beginning that on the 10th day they set aside the Passover lamb until the 14th day. So from the very beginning of the new calendar, there has never been any events on the first 10 days. The first 10 days of Nisan, there are no events described in the calendar. Okay, the beginning of the calendar is 10 Nisan. It's the day they set aside the Passover lamb. It's the day, according to Joshua chapter 4, it's the day the Israelites entered into the promised land. And it's the day that Jesus entered Jerusalem on a donkey, the triumphal entry. Okay, see the correlation we have here? See how this is correlating with the possible coming of the Lord and the Jubilee year and this pattern. We have a pattern set forth in the Bible, and it leads us to Nisan 10, and the Jubilee year is the key year in question. So we are, you know, I guess I can't say everyone is in agreement. Okay, I was going to say everyone is in agreement that 2017 is Jubilee. Okay, 2017 is Jubilee year. Okay, it goes back. We can go back to from the Judah ben Samuel prophecy that for 400 years
Jerusalem would be under Turkish rule from 1517 to 1917. And then 1917, there was a deliverance. Okay, 1967, there was a deliverance. 2017, we are at the 6,000 marker, the 6,000 year marker on the calendar, 120 Jubilees. So we are in now, or we are coming into now, our Jubilee year. Okay, for those who believe that the Jubilee year begins in Tishri, the trumpet will sound on the 7th month and the 10th day. That's Nisan 10. And for those who believe that the beginning of the year and the beginning of the Jubilee is Nisan, then those of us who believe this, we need to be anticipating now our deliverance. We need to be anticipating now the arrival of the King, the entrance into the promised land, the triumphal entry. This is what we need to be hoping for. Okay, and either way you look at it, it does not matter, guys, where you find the beginning of the Jubilee year. Because if you say Tishri is the first month, it leads you to Nisan 10. The trumpet will sound on the 10th day of the 7th month. If Tishri is the first month, Nisan 10 is the Day of Atonement. And if you think that the Jubilee year begins in the spring, this is the same time frame that we should be anticipating. There is no excuse. There is no excuse that anybody would ever go beyond Nisan 10 in their search for the deliverance of the Jubilee. Our Jubilee deliverance. This is the time, folks. This is the time established. This is the appointed time. I don't think there's any way we could go beyond this. I don't think there's any way. We are here. This is the arrival, the appointed time, Nisan 10. It's the beginning of the year. For those who believe Jubilee's in the spring, this is our time of deliverance. And for those who believe that the Jubilee begins in the fall, we still need to follow the biblical text. Even if you're confused about the beginning of the year, even if you're confused about where the first month is, the 7th month and the 10th day, come on, guys. Nisan 10. Either way, this is where we're led to. There's no getting around it, and there's no excuse. No, all men shall be without excuse. Any way you cut it, Nisan 10 is the day. I hope you guys catch this. I really hope you guys catch this. I love you all. God bless.
An angel of the Lord came by my bed. It had rainbow wings about 12 foot high and had a white garment on. And over to the left of this angel, kind of behind him, stood Jesus. And he was on the right of Jesus. And Jesus smiled at me. And the angel just spoke this. It said, "Come and see the glory of God." And immediately I was out of my room. And I was standing outside the gates of heaven. Jesus wasn't there, but the angel was. The gates were a mile high and made out of some kind of, it looked like wrought iron, but it wasn't. It was pearl designed, you know, and it was one pearl, but all kind of lights came from the gates. And two angels was on each side of the gates, and they were tall, and they had gold hair that was turned under on the bottom, and they were the keeper of the gates, okay? So the big angel that was with me walked over, and he talked to them, and one of them went inside the gate, and they brought out a book of my life, and it had my name on it. Mary Catherine Baxter had it on the front and the back side. And there, the angel opened up my book, and he read something, and he said, "She can come into the city." So I went into the city with this angel with the beautiful wings, you know. And we come into a grassy area. It's grass everywhere. Oh, my Lord. And the grass looked like it had diamonds in it, you know. And then there was flowers. Oh, man, there was flowers over to my right? Big clumps of flowers that would open up their petals and sing music to you. And then over to my left, there was 5 men with white garments on standing around a pedestal. And then I looked back over here, up on a hillside was many trees, many fruits on these trees. And I noticed there were families, lots of families of every nationality were standing around talking, some on the grass, they were sitting at picnic tables. And they had little children too, and they were picking the fruit and eating it, but no juice come on their hands. I'm looking at all of this and I'm hearing high praises of God. Wonderful praises of God. And I remember hearing chimes in heaven and music everywhere. And as I watched this, you know, I was in awe. The beauty, there was no decay. If one of the pebbles, like on the flowers, I knew if they fell off, they wouldn't decay, it'd just grow another flower. And there's no law of death in heaven, see, or no dying. And then the angel said to me, come and see the glory of thy God. And I went over with him to where the men were. And I saw an angel come down a pathway that had beautiful long hair. Now in heaven I saw angels with wings. Some did not have wings. They had different garments on for whatever job they were going to do. In heaven, they keep accurate records of everything. Heaven has an order to it. And in the Old Testament, it said 2 women angels carrying an ephod. So this one coming down the pathway looked like a woman angel. And sometimes you could see right through them. They're transparent light, okay? And some play music, and they have big garments with pockets for flutes and things. But sometimes they can just move real quick and they're gone, or they can fly. It's just awesome how heaven is. And then these men are making a diamond. And I watched them read this thing from the angel. And the angel with me said, they're going to make a diamond for this person's mansion here in heaven. And they take it to Jesus. He's the master builder. And the man said to me, whatever this person did today, fed the poor, prayed for the sick, whatever they did, they're going to get a reward in heaven. They're laying their treasures up in heaven. So I watched them as they made this substance. It came out on a tray. They poured it on a tray. And one of the men there was Spanish. He had beautiful black hair and smiling. And he took his hands and put in this liquid-like material. And it turned into a rose. And music come out of the rose. And they designed this stone, and it was about this high and this long, and flowers all in it that would sing. Can you imagine a mansion made like that? We go up to the left side of a pathway, and he said, come and see the glory of God. And I'm moving, and I see things, okay? Over to my right, I see chariots suspended in the air. I don't see the buildings yet, but I see these beautiful chariots, and I see like carriers where you carry people in this white-shaped bullet-like thing. And then the chariot of God I saw. His wheel was so huge. The only way I know to tell you how high it was as high as the Empire State Building. And then on the wheels, they were on fire but never burned up, and jewels this big in the wheels. It was God's chariot. And then I look back over here, I'm in awe at everything I'm seeing, and I see 50 white stallions, horses. Their skin looked like white satin. It was so beautiful to see that. The backsides of the horses were around 4 feet across. Their feet were this big, and they were at least 30 foot high. And I looked over there, and the angel said, observe and look. And I looked, and they were standing side by side, all 50 of them. And there was a woman in front of them. I knew she was a redeemed. She had been a saint that went to heaven, and she was redeemed, you know. Her clothing was so beautiful, pale pink dress. And she stood in front of the horses, and she said, all creatures shall praise the Lord. You will go before the Lord, and you will bow, and you will praise ye the Lord. all those horses bowed down, opened their mouth, and all of them said, "Praise you, the Lord," at the same time. And I thought, how beautiful, you know? And then we kept walking, and there was a wall. And I touched it with my hand. It was pure platinum. And it's like the wall had its own wheel or something. You could feel it, like you could touch it like it was touching you back. It was really beautiful. And I was looked down, I was walking on streets of gold. And the angel said, "I'm going to take you and show you the record rooms." And he said, "It's in the Word of God." And said, "There we record things that happen on the earth in people's lives." He said, "Everybody ever born on the earth has a record book in heaven."
Next, Mary Baxter tells how she saw angels who actually keep records of your giving and your attitude as you give. Next, on Stories of the Supernatural. Mary Baxter was given a vision of heaven, complete with angels and beautiful landscapes. But she was told that angels don't just sing all day long. They also keep records.
So he took me to this record room. And all above all these doors was a number, or also an alphabet number of someone's last name. And he said, "There's thousands of these rooms up here, but we keep accurate records." That's what he told me. And he said, when someone gets born again, their message comes up here, and we're going to show you what happens. So all at once I am translated with this angel outside heaven over the earth. He said, "God has spoken. I'm to show you something about the record room so you could tell the people on the earth." So he said, "Now, God has given me the permission and the power to do this." He said, "We're going to go to a church service on the earth, and you're going to actually see when someone gets saved. What happens? What you preach the message and you call them to the altar, but we're going to show you what happens in the spirit." I said, "Okay." So we end up going down, and there's this church, and all at once we're inside the church, but they can't see us. And he said, "What do you see?" I said, "Well, I see a lot of angels." There was 12 angels. 2 on the platform, 1 in the back of the church with a pen in his hand. And the man said, that was with me, the angel said, "There's also a big church on the top of the church. An angel on top of the church. He's in charge of all these other angels." He said, "Every church in the earth that's ordained by God has these angels." And he said, look and learn." So I looked. And the preacher was preaching, "Seek ye the Lord while he may be found. Call upon the Lord while he's near." And then the preacher said, "We're going to take up an offering." And as he did, the angels, there were 2 angels with record books, came, and every time someone gave an offering or a tithe, they wrote their name down and how much they gave and the attitude they gave it in. Isn't that something? And then they did all that, prayed over everything. The angels helped them pray over the money. And these things are very serious to God, okay? Then they put the name of the church, name of the pastor, how old it is, and it's really an order. So after all that was done, the man begins to preach again about sins. And in the back door opens up, a man comes in, he was very drunk. So he comes up to the front, he said, "I'm an old sinner, I need to be saved. I need to be born again." And the preacher said, "Well, son, do you really know what you're saying?" He said, "Yes." Said, "I've run from God for years. I want to give my life to him." This is what he said. And so 2 men came down from the pastor, went down and talked to him and started opening up the Bible and reading it to him, how to be saved. And immediately 2 powerful angels appeared out of nowhere on each side of this man. And the angel with me said, "We're going to show you something about the change of the heart. And we're going to show you what sin does to people." And all around this man's body was black bands, like microphone ropes and things. And the angel said he's in bondage. But as he confesses his sins to God and asks forgiveness in the name of Jesus, those bands will be bursted. And he said, "Look what we do." And the man said, "Well, I'm an old drunk and a liar. God forgive me. In Jesus' name, wash me in your blood." And when he did, one of the big angels touched this band, it burst into fire and melted off. Every time he confessed a sin to God, said, I'm a manipulator, you know, and all these things. He said, I'm an adulteress. He said, Lord, forgive me in Jesus' name. And everything was from his heart. And then and all the bands began to fall off, and he began to get really, really warm. An angel touched his heart, and his heart was black before, and it turned crimson red. And I watched this as the man straightened up and praised the Lord. And then we left the service, and the angel of the Lord said, 3 days has passed, I want to show you another scene. So he took me to a little apartment. There was the same man laying on the couch, and there was 2 angels in the room, or 3, and said, he's dying. And the man grabbed his chest, and he had a heart attack, he died. And his soul came, I seen it come right out of his body and stand beside him. And he was an outline like a negative on a film, and he was transparent looking. You really couldn't tell who he was, you know, then. And the man said, the 2 angels stepped over to him and said, we're here to escort you to heaven. And they began to escort him to heaven, and I got to go with them. And they brought the man to a place of heaven where was the river of life. The river of life was water that anybody could walk on, swim in, go under, you were not drowned. It was beautiful. But on each side of the river was trees for the healing of the nations. They would pull the leaves off and give them to the man to eat, and this water to drink. So he went through the river of life and came out on the other side, and you could hear his family shouting. In fact, the redeemed and angels was everywhere watching this shouting. And the angel said to me, he's going to come back over this side, and you're going to see what we do. So he took me to a corridor where there was all doors, archways, and they were open. One was a room of crowns, one was a room of robes, one was a room of gowns. And the angel said, because he just got saved, he only gets a gown of salvation, but he will go to school here in heaven. And I watched them bring the man over, but you couldn't tell he was really a man yet because he was still transparent looking. And they brought him into this room, and I could hear them laughing with him. And I knew that they were trying on his robe. And when they brought him out, the man looked 80 when he died. He looked like 29 or 30 years old. He had jet black hair, taller, smiling. And the angels said, we knew which was your robe. We were just playing with you. And said, come, we're going to try on your crown. Said, you get a crown of salvation. So they took him into the other room, and you could hear him laughing and playing with him. And he came out with his crown on a tray. Now the crown had gold, just solid gold, with little spikes on it. I don't know how you would call that. But they said that God has to put the crown on your head. That's what he told him.
When we return, a glimpse of more angels, a heavenly band, and the throne of God. Next, on Stories of the Supernatural. Mary Baxter was given a vision of heaven, complete with angels and beautiful landscapes. She was shown what angels do on earth, and now she will be taken to the very throne of God.
They took this man before the throne of God, and his book was there. And God, the throne of God, there's glory and power and majesty. And in front of the throne are thousands of seats. The children's seats are solid gold, and they sit in them with diamonds big as your fist. And then from there, you look out, pianos are 40 feet across. It takes 3 angels to play them. Trumpets 35 feet long, big angels are blowing a trumpet. And then you see the glory of God, the rainbow above the throne. You see the 4 beasts that are 50 feet high. It is so awesome. And all you see is a huge cloud with an outline of a man inside. And you're looking at all this majesty, and you're wondering, Lord Jesus, why doesn't everybody on the world want to serve you? And that's why he shows us heaven, so people will want to serve God and go to heaven, you know. So I'm watching all of this, and they're holding the man up in front of the throne because he's still scared. And then I seen a man's hand come out of the cloud and pick up his book of life. And on the altar was the Lamb's book of life, which his name had been recorded in 3 days before. So I'm looking at this, and all at once, the Lord's voice spoke, and it was like many, many waters. And I heard him say this, I see another one's been redeemed by my son's blood. He said, Jesus is the only sacrifice. He said, another one's been redeemed from the devil's hand by my son's blood. Isn't that something? And then the Lord speaks to the man, and he said, I see you receive my son on a certain date, a certain time, on the earth, and I see the message you received him from. And he said to the man, he said, welcome into the joy of the Lord. And the angels brought the tray to God, and he took the crown off, and he put it on his head, and when he did, God's big hand went inside there. He said this to him, said, there'll be no more death here, there'll be no more dying, no more pain, for I make all things new. He said, welcome into the joy of the Lord. And God reached his hand out and wiped the man's tears away because he was crying. And he said, there'll be no more crying here. And what they did, they put the crown on, and he began to shout and do leaps. And his family all come up, were wishing him, they were praying, shouting, worshiping, whatever you do. They were happy that he was there. And then I was taken by this angel back again to the room of tears, where this man was in the purple garment. And there was all types of beautiful books in this room too. But it's in Psalms 56, verse 7, 8, and 9. Thou tellest my wandering, put thou my tears into bottles, are they not in thy book? When I cried unto the Lord, then my enemies turned back. This I know, God is for me, in God I will put my trust. I'll not be afraid of what man will do unto me. So what I have learned, that we're fighting evil with good and with the living Word of God. And many people don't know that. There's knowledge, there's lack of phantom. It's true, not of food right now, but there's a lack of phantom of the Word of God. And when God wants you, if you want God and you're hungry to know Him, He'll fill you.